to the Old Man Orange podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunigan, and today we have a very special guest.
This is Frank Gross, otherwise known as F.D. Gross, author of the Wolfgang novel called Wolfgang.
You know, we thought it's like, we've been talking about this for a while there. We're like, you know what, we should do a Van Helsing episode. You love Van Helsing, we love Van Helsing, and then time kind of passed, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's getting close to Halloween. Dude, we should do the Van Helsing episode. It'll be perfect. And then Frank said, he's like, well, I'm going to watch Bram Stokers Dracula as well, too. I'm like, well, that's it. We'll do a Van Helsing double feature. Perfect. Why not? And then I thought about it. Okay, this is episode 333, so it's almost like episode 666.
Yeah, only you're about 300 short.
I know, but it's the halfway mark to 666. If we just double the number, all of a sudden we're there. So I'm like, dude, it's the perfect one for the Van Helsing double feature.
Let's try and bring it back in 5 years so you could do 666 with us.
Yeah, only 5 more. That's an interesting thing about only 5 more years and we'll hit 666.
Yeah, did you actually do the math on that?
I just put it together. I was just timesing it by 2, and we've been going for about 4 or 5 years by this point.
Yeah, we're a little over 5 years. July would have been the 5-year mark.
Oh, well, congrats to you guys. That's definitely some really diligent dedication there.
Thanks. It almost just passes by like, oh, it's today our anniversary? Oh yeah, happy anniversary. Okay, whatever. It's usually when we hit like a big number is where it's like, it's 300! But if it actually is on it, there's actually one time, I think it was the first anniversary we had, where I was like, dude, I brought a Soda Shacks, which said like Shaquille O'Neal soda and made a thing of it. But then beyond that, though, it's like, oh, wow, we've been doing it for a year. How about that? Now it's just like, I don't fucking know, 3, 4 years, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So you've been doing it for 5 years. I've been a published author now for a year. I published last September, so my 1 year anniversary was just last month, though.
Nice.
Congratulations to you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's cool to get.
How's the next Wolfgang book coming along? If you don't mind asking.
I don't mind asking, of course. I projected that it was supposed to come out actually this year, the second one, and that just totally didn't happen. It's a lengthy process, but I definitely plan to have it out sometime next year. Hopefully, probably around summertime. Don't mark my words on that, please. But I'm definitely going to try. It's definitely going to come out 2018 at some point.
Sweet.
But in the interim, I had been doing the Wolfgang audiobook, which I finally finished yesterday and posted the last video on YouTube yesterday.
Oh.
So anybody can actually go on there and listen to the entire thing for free and leave their comments and tell me what they think. So if you're into vampires and vampire hunters, hey, that's what we're talking about today.
Well,
Well, congratulations on uploading that last video. That's got to be like a huge weight off your chest once you actually get that last upload. Like, there it is, finally.
Yeah, it was. And, I can actually kind of focus more on the rewrite I'm doing now. And hopefully the editing will start before the new year. So if that happens, then we're good to go for next year at publishing at some point. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
Well, that's how I feel. It's just...
But sorry for my tardiness tonight. Me and my wife, we were at a silent book reading tonight. I don't know if you know what that is.
No, what's a silent book reading?
Yeah, so I just learned about this probably a couple months ago, but it's like something that's all over the United States, and I don't know if it's in other countries too, but yeah, it is. She's nodding her head. Yes, it's in other countries. But basically, people get together, and instead of getting together and talking, they get together and they read.
Isn't it?
So everyone in unison, like everyone in unison reading aloud, or you said silent? Never mind. So
Silent.
A keyword.
You see, Ryan, you'd be the guy that shows up with a comic book to this thing and starts reading it out loud and acting out the characters. And you're like, God, this guy doesn't get the concept.
Yeah, so they like this one here in Fort Lauderdale. They do it once a month, and you basically bring whatever book it is that you're reading at the time, and you just kind of hang out. Maybe you'll chit chat a little bit beforehand, and you have some drinks, some cheese, some meat, whole thing like that. Maybe talk about some movies or what the latest book is that you're reading, what you enjoy about it, things like that. But for the most part, it's supposed to be just reading time, basically. And so people are supposed to see that and catch on. And it's kind of like you're trying to set like a burning trend of, reading, kind of trying to get it back into the groove with people as far as entertainment-wise. So it's interesting because people walk by and they kind of look at you and they're like, what are they doing? And then they stop and think for a moment. They're like, they're reading. What is that?
They're like, how archaic. It's like, look at these cave dwellers and they're reading away at their literature.
I'm waiting for like kids to like kind of live off texting constantly. So like when they read a book, like they misspelled love. Oh, what do you mean? Well, they didn't use a heart. They didn't use a heart emoji, or they didn't spell L-U-V.
Yeah, they put L-O-V-E. They're like, that's like how my grandpappy spells it.
It might be like 40 years away from that. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for who knows? Probably some people don't even know what LUV means.
Exactly, you never know.
They only go with the hieroglyphs of emojis.
I know there's this older guy I know, he's a real nice guy, and he like predicts in the future that everything will be like all like emoji based. He's like, I thought that in the 60s that's how it was gonna be. It was gonna be all like done by pictures, like ancient Egypt style. He's like, yeah. So of course he's seeing it play out, so it's all making sense. It's all relevant.
Mm.
Just cycles in. I think I heard like a funny theory. I think it was on Rooster Teeth. Like we kind of look at ancient hieroglyphs and all that. Like they worship cats. And like, what if it was as simple back then? Like, look, it's a cat. The way people are with cat videos today.
They're like, yeah, I'm gonna draw it on this wall. Look at he's wearing a funny costume.
Exactly.
Look at my cat's a god.
Well, my god is my god's like a fox or an angry dog. Like all just joking around. And years later, they worship these. This is what they believe. Like, oh no, they're just drawing their pets.
Yeah, it's like look at my cat's talking to flying saucers. You know why? Because that's what we feed them in. They're like they look at like, see, they're talking to aliens. It's like, oh no, he was just talking about his cat's dish that he loves so much.
Yeah. So I've been doing that, and some other things I've been doing it as of late to pass the time between work, real life, writing books, that sort of thing. I've also been, and since it's the Halloween season, I've been working at this haunted house called Enigma Haunt down here in South Florida. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, man, these guys, they know what they're doing as far as scaring the shit out of people. And I don't know if you've been watching Walking Dead or whatever, but there's this comment, and this is a spoiler. There's this comment that Negan says. He says, "Hope you're wearing your shit pants, because I tell you, when you go to this haunted house, you better hope you're wearing your shit pants."
Does he say that to like 6-year-old kids that come in? Like, you got your shit pants on, little Timmy?
No, they don't say that there, but I'm just saying, like, if I were to quote how you feel going into this place, that's the quote I would say. Hope you're wearing your shit pants before you go in, because it might be a little
black leather jacket, red scarf in the front saying that.
Yeah. So I actually met these guys at a tattoo convention that I went to recently, and they had some other actors there, and they're passing out flyers, and they said, you want to be a scare actor. So I was like, oh, I always wanted to try this and do this, and so I went, tried out, and actually have my daughter doing it with me. So I try to convince my wife to do it with me, but she's laughing right now. She gets to. It's a great experience. You guys ever do anything like that?
I've walked through haunted houses. I've never actually joined. Actually, you know what? I one time helped assembled one. I just did, a little bit of painting, a little bit of like setting up the stage, and then walked through it, but didn't actually do any of the monster stuff, which seems like that could be fun.
Yeah, myself, I've never done it either, but like I have gone to haunted houses, but I always thought that would be pretty cool to do. Like to be. It doesn't really matter what it is. Anybody in the haunted house, it'd be pretty darn fun.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's definitely a rush scaring the shit out of people, and I definitely recommend it to anybody who loves horror and likes Halloween and just wants that rush. It's definitely awesome. They have there's actually 3 different ones under one roof, right? Mm-hmm. And each house is themed. And I've gotten the chance to work at many of the different positions all throughout each of the houses. And I tell you, man, the people there, it's like a family. They all just love it. It started off in somebody's garage and at their house, and then they just kept growing and growing and adding and adding. And now it's like this whole professionally done haunted house with security, police, lines. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And actually, they're becoming, or they are, the number one in South Florida, I think. But anyway, long story short, it's pretty awesome, and I wish I could tell you more about what I do in there, but I'm not really allowed to talk about it as of now, at least until the season's over. So that's one of the rules of working.
Yeah,
well, that in itself sounds like a very Halloween thing. It's fun, but I can't tell you what I do.
Yeah. Now you say it's themed. What's the 3 themes? Can you kind of give an insight on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. The first one is called Pandemic, and it's basically themed around these hillbilly cannibals that invite you into their house, and they're basically feeding off of humans, and they got zombies as pets, and it's like this whole backwoods kind of theme out in the country. It's actually pretty awesome.
That sounds sweet.
They got a bunch of people running around with meat cleavers, and they got this really tall, gigantic scarecrow guy. It's pretty cool.
That one sounds pretty sweet.
And so that's the first one. The second one is called Into Oblivion, and it's a combination of black light, glow in the dark, post-apocalyptic warrior thugs taking on the funhouse of clowns. Evil clowns.
That one actually sounds pretty awesome. So they're like beating on the clowns, so you're not scared of the clowns, you're more scared of the thugs, that are fucking with the clowns.
They're pitting against each other. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So one side hates the other side hates the other side. But I tell you, man, from my personal experience walking through there, the clown section is one of the scariest, man. They got some awesome props and real disturbing looking clowns and some great animatronics.
Oh, that's cool.
And I tell you, just walking through there with the lights on is scary enough, You're
like, oh my gosh, I went through here. It's already scary. Don't even turn the lights off on me. Clowns and props, and it's like West Side Story in here? No way.
I'll just snapping their fingers, walking towards you.
That'd be scary. It's like, what's the next one? Well, it's a scary West Side Story version. Like, oh god.
Yeah. So I said there's 3. So it's actually a 2-story building. Okay. It's an old gym that they converted into a haunted house, and it's 2 stories. So the first 2 are on the bottom, and then the third one is called Realms of Terror. Excuse me. So not only is it 3 haunted houses, but the top floor is actually 4 mini haunted houses put together.
So
all of them each having their own kind of theme. So it's like Realms of Terror. So, and you pass through these tubes, and you enter into a new realm, and one of them's like an aliens setting. Another one is a Nightmare Christmas. It's good. It's disturbing for sure.
Is there a Krampus monster? Can you say?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. But I can't give away too much more.
I understand. I understand. I totally get it.
Yeah, but it's definitely cool. You guys got any badass haunted houses by you?
There's one in Sonora that's been there for the last 20 plus years. They've kind of done it, and it's gotten slightly bigger as time has gone on, and they always do a pretty good production job of it. I think it's kind of a mixture of volunteers / I know they always have a lot of high school kind of kids and probably theater kids that get involved with it to kind of put it together. And that one's always pretty darn cool. It's always scary. You know what I mean? I mean, it's low budget, but that's okay. You can still see how much time and effort they put into it, and that's always really fun. One thing I wanted to ask, though, since you're in Florida, at Universal Studios on your side, did they ever have the Mummy haunted house back in the day?
Yeah, I don't know if they did. I never went to it. They have the Mummy ride.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know if they ever had the Mummy like themed haunted house.
Because in Hollywood, you know, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, if not longer ago than this, they had the Mummy. It was like literally a haunted house, but it was Mummy themed, like the movie. This all ties into Van Helsing, so it works out. But I kid you not, though, that was like the scariest haunted house I was ever at. It was just everything in it was like you're going through an Egyptian pyramid, and you got, you know, all the fucking dogs and cats and everything like that coming at you. It was still at the time period where they could grab you and it was okay, so that made it even more scary. And then to top it off, it's just like, yeah, you had just like fantastic production design too to really like dial it in. And plus it was just kind of cool because, you know, I'm like, when do you normally ever see a haunted house that's Egyptian themed? So I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that would totally be awesome. You know, I wish they still did haunted houses where there was like Dracula theme, you know, like just old school horror monster themes, you know, like even like if they had like a Frankenstein castle or a Dracula castle theme, or
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Creature Black Lagoon, and like you said, the Mummy, like they used to have. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, no, haunted house is always sweet.
I can't say that the people that have been going through this one that I've been working at, they say that it's definitely more intense and better than Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights. So that's definitely
gotta be good. Yeah, that's a great compliment.
Yeah, it's a great. Yeah, and even while I was in there scaring people, I could hear them like after their heavy breathing, you know, going, "Oh my God, this is so much worse than," you know, worse as in good, you know, from Halloween Horror Nights. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I remember back in the day, this is something I always wanted to see, like when it existed. I don't know, once again, another 15 plus years ago, but Pantera had like some haunted house thing. And I almost want to say it was like in Louisiana, like it wasn't in Texas for some reason, I don't think, but that always sounded so cool. It's like, dude, it's a haunted house and Pantera all in one.
You know, I think I saw a special on the Travel Channel about that once.
Uh-huh.
And it had the guys from Pantera on there, and they were talking about it. So I wonder if that was probably what I saw.
Yeah, I saw it.
It was some metal. It was like a metal band that had a haunted house, and I think that was them.
Yeah, because I remember seeing it like on one of those like VH1 like Metal Mania something or another kind of like rock talk shows, and it was like, oh, what the heck? There's a Pantera thing? That's so cool.
I would just like it. I know this joke's gonna be some low hanging fruit here, but I would just love it as soon as you're leaving. It's just like, walk on home, boy. Dun, 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 as you're leaving.
No, that would be sweet. But yeah, you know, all that kind of stuff's so cool. But
yeah,
if we're gonna jump in the movies, which one do we want to start with? Do we want to start with Van Helsing or Dracula? Bram Stokers Dracula, 1992, one to be exact.
Are you asking me or Ryan?
I'm asking both you guys.
I'm thinking we go in chronological order, but I'm fine either way.
So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. So I've been reading Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1904 edition. Finished that probably like last week or 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
I've read it about 11 times now, and I still love that story. And to be able to read that and then watch the movie again, which I've watched numerous times as well. Although the movie is a lot different than the book, it is still good in its own respect for what it was. And of course, Gary Oldman plays the most awesome Dracula ever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course, you know, Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. But as far as comparing the two, I would say that there's totally two way different feelings that you get from watching both of those movies. Bram Stoker's what it would be like if vampires existed in the real world, whereas the Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman is more of the fantasy, dark, steampunk version of the Dracula, vampire hunting kind of stuff. So, but anyway, we're getting sidetracked here. Bram Stoker's Dracula, great movie, great book. Where do you want to start?
Oh, we could just talk all about it. I think just like, it doesn't really matter. We don't have to go like technically like in beginning to end of the movie. We just kind of talk about whatever we like in it. Because to me, it's like, I mean, like when I think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, when that movie came out, it was just such like a big deal. I remember just like, oh, you gotta see this. This is the Dracula movie to see. And I just remember being a kid going like, oh my gosh, this Dracula movie here looks so amazing. Like, I so gotta see it. And I remember playing like, there was the Super Nintendo and Genesis game of the time, the Bram Stoker's Dracula one, which was kind of like a Castlevania knockoff in a sense. But it was still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean like, it's not like as good as Castlevania for sure, but you could still go back and probably play it and it's still kind of fun. At least, I don't know, maybe you can't hardcore play it, but still. And that's how like that movie kind of was. It was always that one like, oh dude, we gotta see this. It's gonna be scary. It's gonna be dark. It's gonna be Dracula and all this kind of stuff. And it's one of those movies that like, I will say it's Bram Stoker's Dracula. I almost want to say this. I kind of almost want to like it a little bit more than I do. Like I definitely do enjoy this one, but it's almost like in my mind, I look at it like almost like this like amazing ginormous movie of like this, and then when you kind of watch it, it's definitely a very cool movie, but it's not really like a perfect movie by any means.
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so as much. I will tell you what a perfect movie is coming up soon in this podcast, but I think that Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of those ones where it's like I really do enjoy it, but it does have just I don't know. It's got some things in it that kind of make me like. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I love Keanu Reeves in it. Like I will have to say, that beginning scene,
of course,
when Keanu Reeves is getting into the carriage. I know we've talked about this on the podcast many a times, but like I just cannot help but get the biggest smile on my face because like his reactions in it is he just kind of shows up, and there's this creepy guy driving the carriage, and he reaches out with like his metal hand towards Keanu and like pulls him into the doorway, and Keanu just has this look on his face like, oh, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. And then he gets in the cab and he's just kind of there, and there's just all this weird stuff going on. I mean, there's like these dogs running up alongside, like looking at him like they're gonna tear his arm off if he gets out, and he just kind of looks over and goes, huh, dogs. And then all of a sudden they go farther on, then there's like this cliff, and the driver, of course, is all of about like 2 inches away from driving off the cliff, and Keanu Reeves is looking down, and he just kind of has that same look where it's just like, huh.
He's like, all right, well, he's like, I'm here to do my job, so I don't want to mess this up.
It's like, look, I seen the Grand Canyon. That ain't shit.
Yeah, I sell real estate. You know what I mean? You see a lot of stuff in real estate. I'm just saying, you don't get surprised by too many things. Then next thing you know, there's the blue fire behind, and it's going around, and he kind of puts his head back out the window and looks back at it just like, I've seen some blue fire before. You know what I mean?
Well, it takes a while before, like, because even when Dracula is kind of like hunched over, he's like, hello, I'm Dracula. He's all hunching around, like being just, either he wants to suck his blood or he wants to fuck him. That's the only two things this guy could want to do, the way he's acting. And it takes him a while before he's all like, ew, dude, get off me. Because for a while, the whole time, he's being like, yeah, it's okay. Like, back when we fought for wars, that does no laughing matter. Like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to piss you off. Want to hit, so.
Yeah, well, the scene where he's in the bedroom chamber and he's shaving and all that, and Dracula's like, your country is not my country. You see very many strange things, and then he does the one line, I've already seen strange things. like the most emotion like you'll ever see out of that guy.
Well, I like what Keanu said too. He said he's like, You know, I wasn't really happy with my performance in Dracula. It just kind of came. Like, I was literally just in this, like, roulette of just movie after movie after movie after movie after movie. And then Dracula kind of came, and I was just so burnt out at that point from, like, acting that I wanted to give it my all, and I just, you know, couldn't. And then I saw something else somewhere. They're like, you know what? Because the student, like, apparently, because I always thought, like, my entire life, I always thought, like, you know who would have been the perfect John Harker at the time, or Jonathan Harker at the time? Would have been, fucking
Christian Slater. I'm just throwing a name out there from the 90s.
No. That would have been hilarious.
Oh, I've seen strange things already. I went through a blue inferno.
No, but it's Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, I think, would have been the perfect one there.
Yeah.
And funny enough, as I was kind of reading in on this movie, it's like, that's actually who Francis Ford Coppola wanted, but the movie studio was like, no. You get Keanu Reeves. The women love Keanu.
Oh my
And their
God.
thought too is they're like,
You know, it's funny that you say that Johnny Depp would have been a good Jonathan Harker, but I don't know, man. Now that I've seen the movie 120,000 times, it's like I can't imagine anybody else playing Jonathan Harker now.
well,
You know, and even when I'm reading the book, it's like I'm thinking Keanu Reeves. I'm like, oh, I'm plagued by this, but at the same time, I'm like, I've already seen strange things. You know, it's just I don't know.
Plus, when they get back to... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When they get back to England and he sees Gary Oldman as young version, and I mean, I get it. He saw the painting on the wall, so he puts two and two together. But at the same time, though, my mindset would have been like, oh, that looks kind of like that one dude, kind of. Where he's like, it's the man. He made himself young again. And then he's just kind of like shuffling in place, kind of looking in like he looks back at him. He looks back. He's just kind of like shuffling in place, like rocking his shoulders back and forth, like this is me cowering.
Well, I like that part too because it's just like the man. It's like almost like it's crazy. Like, okay, John, you can calm down. Now we're in public. You all this shouting.
It's the man himself.
It's like all this shouting has made your hair go white.
You know what? When Keanu Reeves comes back, you want to know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of, this might seem a little off the beaten path for a second, but it kind of reminds me of Deer Hunter. Because Deer Hunter, that movie's broken into 3 acts, and each act, one of the 3 guys is the main focus. First act is the wedding, and you see them all getting married. And we see the dude getting married, and he's the main character. The groom is the main character of that act. Second act, main character is Christopher Walken. Third act, when he gets home and then goes back to Nam, main character is Robert De Niro. When the groomsman gets back from Vietnam, he goes from being, because he's like this cool like guy, his wife just loves him, like, oh, I love you so much, this and that. They're about to get married, but then he comes back and he's just like, I don't know what to fucking do, man. I'm just a fuck up. My life, I don't know what it is. Keanu embodies that when he gets back to England. He just totally seems like I don't know the actor's name, but he seems like the groomsman for the groom from like the beginning of Deer Hunter, where he's just all like, hey, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm here for. Then all of a sudden he gets back, like he just can't do nothing. He's getting his hair white. He's like having a mental breakdown every 5 seconds.
It just sounds funny.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing when I was selling real estate. Then this vampire thing happened, and
that was Nam for him, literally.
Well, it kind of was. I mean, he was strapped up, and he had these women that were just draining his blood slowly. Like, every day they drain my blood so I cannot escape, and I have to just lay here on this bed and take their torment.
I definitely like the imagery that the director is Francis, right?
Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola on this one.
Yeah, I like the imagery that they added to the movie to enhance it. To the story, because when you read the book, all this kind of stuff that they added in there wasn't in the book, and like where they got like the vampire lady sucking on his blood, and like one's attached upside down and stuff and walking around. It was just like a cool twist, I thought, that they portrayed in the movie that you don't get that kind of flair in the book because it's kind of it's a classic, it's literature, But one thing that you don't get in the movie is all the insight that Jonathan Harker says in his journal. There's all these emotions and stuff that he feels throughout the story in the journal entries that you just don't get in the movie. So for anybody that has never read the book, I definitely suggest you read the book and then watch the movie again, because there's definitely stuff that is left out of the movie, whereas there's stuff left out of the book that's in the movie.
Well, I can say I never.
I don't know.
Oh, I never read the book, but I remember seeing a play of it, and it was probably an abridged version. But the way I remember it, maybe you guys can correct me, but the way I remember it was Dracula, they had some business with him, and he comes to their place, and then it turns out, oh, this motherfucker's spooky and creepy, and that's where he starts doing, he's like, I want Mia, I want the girl, and it all happens at their place, and Mia's father plays a much bigger role as well. Am I right there, or am I kind of, it was some time ago.
I don't know what story that is.
Was that the play that was in SRT?
Something like that, yeah. I figured it was probably an abridged version. They combined some stuff and squished it down, but yeah.
Yeah, there's no meeting of Mina's father at all in the original story.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Was that play the SRT
that's interesting.
one? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
It was actually a Columbia College play.
Oh, okay. Because I say, like, me and Cisco, we saw, like, the SRT one, and it was actually, like, I was pretty impressed with, actually, that play, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was kind of cool just seeing Dracula in a play form. I mean, it's definitely, like, they make it almost like, okay, there's the beginning part, and then the rest of it kind of more takes place in one singular room. It's a play. Where do you expect it to go? But it kind of worked. It was kind of like, that's kind of cool, and the actors are all doing a pretty good job and everything like that. But
I would totally love to see a play of Dracula. That would be totally cool.
Yeah, I was impressed. If you ever get the chance, if any like local playhouse is doing it or something like that, it was pretty cool. It was like one of those ones like America's was like, I'm not the biggest play person, but when my buddy's like, dude, I got tickets to Dracula, I'm like, well, goddamn right, I want to see Dracula. You know what I really like, and I was kind of when I was reading up on the Francis Ford Coppola movie, and I didn't really realize this exactly, was that I like how all the effects in the movie, there's no digital effects. Like, literally, Francis Ford Coppola, he hired a team at the beginning, and the guys were like, Francis, we can't do this stuff. What you're asking for? We need computers. We need technology. We need Terminators. And then Francis was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm going to bring my own blood relatives in here. They'll know how to build stuff. They know how to breathe and eat movies. But the kind of the cool thing is this is one of those like almost like last movies to just embody like, let's do a bunch of old-fashioned, movie magic tactics.
Yes.
And like,
Absolutely.
Let's not use computers. Let's use things that they almost would have used in like the 20s and 30s and before, and to really give that 1800s feeling. And it's like one of those ones, I noticed it while watching it, but then it's like I didn't realize you didn't really think about it sometimes. You're like, oh, well, they probably got, maybe a couple effects here and there, but it's like, no, it's pretty much like the whole thing's all in the camera effects. I think that blue fire is the only thing that's like slightly done in post, but I don't think it's computer. It might still be like hand-drawn or something like that. But
yeah,
other than that,
I have to agree with you. That's huge difference between that Dracula and Van Helsing, the modern Van Helsing movie.
Well,
it's like night and day, two totally different contrasts, abstract movies,
Mm-hmm.
But what was your favorite part of Bram Stoker's Dracula with dude Kiana and oh, it's me, Winona Ryder, Mina.
Well,
and, I'm doing a horrible job at acting.
She shoplifts something on her way out the door.
Yeah. Hey, you put that down. That's not yours to take. That's part of the production teams. Well, to me, really, like, at the end of the day, like, my favorite part of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I think it's always been this, is Anthony Hopkins is Van Helsing. Like, he, like many movies, and when Anthony Hopkins shows up, next thing you know, he's fucking taken down the set himself. It's like he carries that movie so well, and just his portrayal. And I like how like the way that he kind of does Van Helsing, as he's this guy who's just like really into science, really into technology. They do give him kind of more that vampire hunterness, which I know in the book he wasn't really like. That kind of like all happened at the same time. It's like, oh god, I'm the scientist guy, and all of a sudden now there's vampires and things like that. Where I think some variations throughout the years kind of made him more like, oh no, he's been hunting monsters all his life. That's what he does when he's not giving science lectures, talking about sexual diseases and making jokes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In the book, they portray him definitely more as a professor of science, and like at first in the book, it takes him a while to believe that vampires even exist. Whereas in the movie, it's like, I knew this from the beginning. This is my destiny.
Yeah, he
You know,
whips out the book and slams it down. Like, I've been carrying this around all life long.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about his performance is he seems kind of detached, and it works in a funny way. Like, and I feel like this movie does have, because it's not really, no way you could call this a comedy, but it has some, aside from Keanu, there are some genuinely really funny moments that come in at dark times. Because I like how detached he is from everybody, and there's the part where there's the funeral, and everyone's so sad and solemn, and then he walks up to this dude.
Yeah.
I get you're sad that she's dead and all that shit, but maybe it's bad timing on my part, but that bitch's head needs to come off. I need to rip her heart out. Where are you going? Where are you going? All right, whatever.
He's like, we need to get her body. And he's like, what, you want to do an autopsy now? He's like, no, I just want to cut out her heart and cut off her head.
Yeah, like
he just walks away. Dude just walks away, and he's standing there like, something I said? What?
And I think that's the guy that is that.
Yeah.
The husband guy. He's played by Carrie Elways, right?
Right, the My Sweet Wesley guy.
Yeah, because that's the Carrie Elways one, which that was kind of cool. I didn't notice that every single time watching that movie, and then I watched it this time. I'm like, oh, or maybe I did notice it and I just forgot. But I was like, dude, that's Carrie Elways. That's awesome.
Well, those three guys, like those guys, I feel kind of bad for them because they all just got wrapped up. Like, dude, there's this one hot, like, redhead chick that she's totally into me. Oh, she's totally into me. And they all just hang out. They're all just being friends, you know, like, okay, whatever. I got friend zone, but it's cool, whatever. And then she dies, and they're just like, okay, I guess we're all stuck with each other. I guess we're going to go our own separate ways. Oh, great. Now her friend, who I barely even fucking know, has the same shit. So I got to go along because it's the gentlemanly thing to do. And the guy from Texas like, I got a fucking oil ranch back home. Why the fuck am I even doing this shit?
I'm supposed to be in Texas doing this thing, and now you guys got me on this crusade to fight Dracula.
And I like how Van Helsing has this whole, like, he's just like, it finally happened, we're gonna rock this motherfucker. Like, all right, old man, whatever.
Like he's like excited that shit's going down. Like he's one of those kind of guys.
Yeah, like I said, like he's the whole time in the movie, he's like, this is my destiny. He's Dracula. It's like, okay. But as far as like why those three guys would hang around in the book, they actually, you know, back in those times, late 1800s, you know, honor was a huge thing back then, and like friendship, camaraderie, all that stuff. So for them to stick around and help each other out and all that, with Mina afterwards, after Lucy dies, you know, that's a whole like gentleman trust thing going on, aristocratic way of life, I think, you know.
I'm just thinking about like people like this day and age, like, dude, I got walked with her number, that was it. She never called me back. Fuck her. She could deal with this shit. You know, I can just see that being this, like, if they remade it, same plot. Today.
Yeah, that's definitely today's world, but back then it's nice to journey back into that old timey feel, you know.
Like the way the three of them came together is they were all on Tinder, and then she was meeting these three guys on the same dates.
And then, of course, one guy brought his crazy professor friend over, and then next thing you know, we're all roped up into this. Like, who? You know what's an interesting thing, though? I was reading, though, is originally they wanted to get Liam Neeson to play Van Helsing in this movie.
Really?
So, of course, he would have been younger at that time period, because that would have been like, you know, almost like boy Liam Neeson by that standard, but still, it's like, that would have been like when I think about it, I'm like, that's actually a really cool choice. Don't get me wrong, I love the Anthony Hopkins one. I think that did totally work, but Liam Neeson would have been like an awesome Van Helsing.
Yeah, no, I think I'm definitely a Anthony Hopkins fan. I can't imagine anybody else playing him, to tell you the truth. But you know,
I'll say there's a Taken joke in there, but I'm gonna let it slide.
All right.
Mina's been taken or whatever, you know.
She's been taken by Dracula.
Yeah.
So he calls her up. He's like, "Okay, Mina, I want you to throw these grenades out the window, like around London, so I can figure
He's on like old fashioned like road, like one of those old fashioned like where you have to hold it up to your ear and like speak into the microphone, like one of those old rotary.
It's just got like
ones.
the cords just drug all out throughout London. Like for some reason, Dracula doesn't notice that there's this cord just spinning out, spiraling out everywhere she goes. You know what's another weird thing though I noticed in researching this movie a little bit more is that they literally cut like a half an hour out of this movie because when they showed the test audiences and everything like that, of course it was too violent. So it's like this is another one of those movies that this happens a lot, it seems like on our retrospects, but there's pretty much a whole half an hour extra movie that I would love to see put back into it and go like, yeah, make me that 2.5 hour long cut of Dracula. Like I want to know what this is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of violence in the movie for sure, and it's like the minimum action scenes that you do get. It's like, oh, come on, a little bit more, and that's where Van Helsing comes into play with Hugh Jackman. I mean, that movie was like all action.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like in Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's like as a kid, I just remember it just kind of like you'd think of it about being very violent, but then you kind of watch it and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of cutaways. You could see where they probably did have some really violent scenes, but then they just pulled them back on each one, which is kind of a bummer. It's like that happened to a lot of movies I noticed around like the late 80s, early 90s, is that they just kind of got pulled back a little bit on this violent spectrum. But it's like nowadays we have the technology, like, you know, if you already released a special edition, but like, why don't you just go the full distance and release this like super definitive cut? Kind of like, you know, if The Godfather, they did it with, I think it's called the complete edition. And what it is they take Godfather 1 and 2 and they edit them both together, but it plays all linear like the book goes. So it literally starts with like, you know, The Godfather Part 2, like when he's a kid coming in, like Don Corleone. And then it builds its way all the way up through that to Godfather 1 and then to the Godfather 2 Al Pacino story. And then they have some extra scenes and different things put into it. It's like, come on, with Dracula, I would, you know, if there's this extra footage just sitting there, like, why not? Why not re-release this, like, in a big, fat, extended cut?
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I would love to see that, too. But the special effects, I totally dug. As far as, like, him transforming into mist, you know, and then turning into the rats. I thought that was a really cool scene.
Yeah.
I like how like the movie kind of holds back on like some of the horror aspects. I mean, this is definitely a horror movie, but I feel like if you tried to make a Dracula movie now, there wasn't like some kind of action-based movie like Van Helsing. I feel like a lot of them would be going for a lot more jump scares and a lot more over-the-top gore. Where this one, it has like a lot of that old-fashioned horror, where it's just there's something sinister lingering there, or even the scene. Like one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie is when Anthony Hopkins and the rest of the crew encounter Dracula while he's going after Mina, and he turns into that bat monster thing. And there's something just creepy just about him standing there in that form, and then as he walks back into the shadows, you see his eyes for a second. It's not really, there might be one quick jump scare when he leans in. Like this movie might have 2 jump scares, but beyond that though, it's almost more of kind of like, you can kind of usually see it coming from a mile away, but something about that makes it more scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it in the distance and you're like, the red eyes, and you know, in the book, they really emphasized on the red eyes in the movie. And that's definitely one of the main points of the story, was the red eyes of Dracula. And you know, a lot of the cutaway scenes and fading into other scenes is always showing like that red orb, the red eyes, you know. And like that's just, they just play off of it, and keep doing it, and to the point where it's like you start to see it in so many different forms, and it definitely adds to that overall creepiness that you're talking about. So
no, yeah, they definitely got, I like that a lot about too, because yeah, you know, that's always the downfall of movies nowadays, is you get too much jump scares and people they almost kind of forgot like what creepy was. And creepy horror is always my favorite type, when you don't have to do anything drastic to make it just look scary and have like a lingering kind of image or like scene. Well, because this is like one of those kind of movies too. I just remember like when finally watching it as like a kid, and you just kind of like, it's one of those ones like you're expecting like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like Dracula. It's gonna be like, you know, 1931 movie just fucking amped up. You know, it's gonna be, you know, be all 90s-ified. And as a kid, I just remember like at first, you know, you see Dracula when he first appears, and I remember looking at my buddy and go, does Dracula have butt hair? Like, what the heck is up with that? Like, as a kid, like, some of these things were just kind of weird. And then, like, later on, too, like, when Dracula's, like, the werewolf, and he's, like, humping Lucy, like, out in, like, the courtyard, and you're just kind of like, you almost feel like Wayne and Garth, like, I feel weird watching this. Like, is this, like, this wasn't the Dracula I was expecting right off the bat. But it's kind of got that, like, because there was those Dracula movies, like, in the 70s where they're like, wait a second, you know, Dracula's kind of like a love story, pretty much, about this tragic thing. And I know that, like, the Francis Ford Coppola kind of incorporated that into there, too. It's like, you know, where it's like, I miss my one true love from back in the day, where it's like, you know, his wife happened to look just like Winona Ryder. What happens if he goes 100 years more into the future, he finds actual Winona Ryder?
That's the sequel.
What if it had an ending like Dracula? You know, like in Dracula Untold, how it ends, and then all of a sudden Dracula's like at that coffee shop in the future. What if this movie ended like that? It's like maybe Dracula somehow, some way didn't die, and all of a sudden, like it's like 100 years, and it's like 1992, and he's sitting at some coffee shop, and like Winona Ryder, the actress, comes by.
Yeah. So speaking of Dracula Untold, I know this is off subject, but off subject, on subject. So I know you played Castlevania, blah, 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 whatever. We talked about Castlevania in the past. But you know, you played the one from one of the latest, the Lords of Shadow, right?
Uh-huh.
You finished that? Did you finish that game?
Oh, yeah, I played the living daylights out of all those.
Okay. So this is a spoiler alert, so just warning you. So at the end of Lords of Shadow, right? And Gabriel becomes Dracula, right?
Yep, and then he goes and sits for like 800 years or whatever.
Right, and it goes into the future. Do you think when they made the movie Dracula Untold, do you think they played off of that storyline kind of? Like, do you think that influence came from that?
I think so. I think it had to, because, you know, it's one of those ones, like, if you're making a Dracula movie, I'm just going to assume that you're pretty, like, into Dracula. I want to assume you're not one of those guys, like, Dracula movie, whatever, I'll take a job. Come on, it's Dracula, how hard can it be? You know, shit, I'll just act like Bela Lugosi. Oh, look at me.
I feel like there are people on those things that on those projects that actually are into it, but sometimes I feel like they hire the director or the writer like that.
Yeah, I do agree with some movies, but Dracula Untold, though, I feel like that guy or that team really liked Dracula, because that's a great movie. It's one of those movies where it's like it's a really fantastic kind of like origin story, because you don't really get that too often. I mean, like going back to Bram Stokers Dracula, there's like a slight origin, you know what I mean? Like it kind of gives you an idea that, okay, here's, you know, Vlad. He's in the 1400s. He was the Impaler, but it doesn't really show too much more other than that. Other than like, I went off the war, I came back, some dickweed sent a telegram saying that I died, so my wife jumped out of like the highest window in the castle, and shit, fuck God, fuck everything. You know what? That's all bullshit. And it's like that's kind of like how that one goes. Where in like Dracula Untold, it just like the whole movie is that origin, and like I just like how it kind of goes through that like. This other army came by. It's like, okay, you're going to give us all your boys because we want your young men to serve in our army. And that's what you're going to do because, you know what? What else are you going to do? What? You going to go against us? There's like 40,000 of us. So instead, Dracula decides, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fight the power. And that's kind of what that whole story is. Like, we're going to go hide back in the castle. And you know, he meets this old man guy who's kind of like...
So going back to Lords of Shadow, so that old man guy in the cave who is who plays what, Sauron in Lord of the Rings? What's his name?
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee, yes, of course.
Who also played Dracula in the 70s or 60s.
Yes, very true. I was just having a brain fart moment there, but so just imagine him and Zobak in Lords of Shadow.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Do you see the similarity?
Oh yeah, it's totally there, and it's like I totally agree with that too.
Because at the end of Lord of Shadows, you have Zobak meeting with Gabriel again in the future, and you know, let the game begin. You know, and like at the end of Dracula Untold, it's like the same exact thing. It's like the same parallelism going on there, and I'm like, dude, they totally got that from Castlevania.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
They totally went for it. Well, that's also like speaking of when we get into Van Helsing, like I really feel that Van Helsing kind of pulls from Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So much so that they actually even use Symphony of the Night music in a part in Van Helsing.
Wait, what?
I read this in there, and I almost wanted to go back in time and check it out, but like
Now I have to go back and try to listen for it. What part?
I want to say when I think they used the bells from Symphony of the Night when Dracula introduces Gabriel when he comes into the castle. I think that's when it said it was. But I'm like, I got to go back and check that out. I didn't have time to go back and do it. But I read that there, and I was like, what? Because my entire, like, when I first saw Van Helsing in theaters, that was the first thing I thought walking out of it. It's like, dude, it's like Symphony of the Night on screen. That is literally what this movie pretty much is. And, like, that's awesome. Like, I'm not complaining at all, but that's, like, you know, those characters. Van Helsing, he's pretty much Alucard. You know, of course, Dracula is Dracula. Then you get Kate Beckinsale, who's Maria. And then you have her brother, who's pretty much like Richter almost. Like the characters kind of, it's different, but like they follow like the same pathway as the characters
absolutely.
Do. You know? And just when I heard that, it's like, oh, well, if that's the case, that means like the way I thought, they were thinking the same thing too.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever, if I'm pretty sure you watched Vampire Hunter D, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's also a little bit of that influence there too, you know, with the whole look with the hat and the coat and the mask over his face, riding the horse kind of thing. And then of course at the end of the movie Van Helsing, you find out what his origin is, you know? Mm-hmm. And if you think back Vampire Hunter D, you know who Vampire Hunter D is, right?
Yeah.
It's direct descendant from Dracula, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that whole, you got like this maddening relating story feeding off a story kind of thing with all these different Draculas and vampire stories, and which makes the whole genre pretty cool in itself anyway. So I always found it, and that's probably one of the reasons why I even, you know, write a story about vampires and vampire hunters. So just got all this cool stuff to talk about and to relate to and to change, and so many different metaphors. It's overwhelming, but it's good at the same time.
Yeah, and you can do it like in any time period, which is what makes it kind of cool to it. Like it works no matter what, even if it's sci-fi. I know that always makes it sound kind of like corny, like, you know, almost like Jason Goes to Space corny, but it still works. Because I'll say like all those like futuristic Castlevania ones, like even Lords of Shadow 2. I actually like Lords of Shadow 2 almost maybe a little bit more than Lords of Shadow 1. You know? Yeah. So it's like you can still kind of do things and it still works. But you know, when watching Van Helsing again, and that's a movie I've watched it so many times over the years, but every time I watch it, I feel like I like it almost that much more. Like I look at that movie and I go, I think this is like the most perfect monster movie out there. I'd even say it's almost like a 4 out of 4 movie in my book. Like I like it that much. Like it's just
not a 5 out of 5.
Oh, well, I was going off the Leonard Maltin rating, which is yeah, Leonard Maltin goes to 4 stars, so we say 4 out of 4. Why we use the Leonard Maltin rating, I'm not too sure, because it seems to confuse people sometimes.
Just before we go on to Van Helsing, I just want to say real quick, because I wrote this down. I wanted to get this out. You know, there's the guy who Keanu was replacing at the beginning of the movie, who was in the insane asylum. Like, he's coming, my master's coming.
Yeah, Tom Waits.
Did anybody else get the? That was Tom Waits.
Yeah.
You're familiar. Anyway, that whole part, that whenever they showed him in the asylum, did anybody else feel like they were watching a Tool music video?
Well, that, and then you know what else I kind of thought this time too? I'm like, you know, like when Jim Carrey in Batman 3, fucking Batman Forever, and he's literally flapping his wings and he's got the long like prison suit on. I'm like, dude, I was watching that like, cause pretty much Rebner was doing that too, right in Dracula. It's like, dude, that must have been what Jim Carrey was aping at that point. Well, because you think about it, it's only 3 years after Dracula, so it would have been super fresh.
Probably, yeah. Also,
oh, yes. Oh yes, we'll get you a bird. Oh yes, a bird. Yes. Well, how about a kitten? Yes, a kitten, a cat, a really big cat. Yes, yes. I love that guy.
I know, he just gets so into it and
He's
everything
such
like that. I like how in that
It's
movie,
just
for some reason, they make it out that like him and Keanu like worked in the same place together for some odd. I don't know why. I don't know why they're. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, he didn't make it back.
Yeah, no, that's part of the story though. Like Renfield was the solicitor before Harker.
But did they
And,
work together though? Like I don't remember that in the book for some reason. I haven't read the book in a while.
Harker was just like an apprentice or whatever. He was just like the lowest of the low on the totem pole, and Renfield was actually the partner to the other guy. I forget his name, but it was a joint venture partnership with the firm.
Okay.
And Renfield was the other partner of the guy that sends Harker. So.
Okay, that sounds about right then. I remember because I just remember like for some reason in the movie it made it feel like they were like really connected. Like, oh man, that's pretty much like the other guy he works for. Like,
nah, yeah,
almost like if it was a buddy cop movie, they should have been together, but one guy went crazy.
After watching this again, I didn't realize that, like, I know Dracula inspired a lot of horror, but I don't mean just through vampires. I mean, maybe there's another story before it, but the idea of just when John goes up there and he's locked there, and for a while there's this subtle kind of like, hey, there's no reason to go, hang out for a minute, and then it just gets more sinister and more sinister and more sinister. Like, no, shit's fucking off here. Like, how many other movies ape that? Like Misery, Tusk, Cure for Wellness. I'm going off more recent examples, but how many movies, that whole thing of like just that awkward tension where the guy's like, oh, you can't leave yet, we got to take care of something.
Yeah,
and,
where the setting is its own character.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, totally. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say where John sends that letter like, oh, this old creepy man wants me to hang out with him for another month and sit around and read reruns of his favorite books. Like, I'm not too sure what we're gonna do. I'm actually kind of afraid. He served me chicken and just like sat there and watched as I ate. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to eat the chicken? Why is he not eating? Like, I'm asking all these questions. I'm afraid he's gonna read them and probably jerk off in the corner like as he does it. I'm not too sure. I showed him a picture of you. I haven't got it back.
He's like, I would require you to stay here with me a month. And he's like, really? A whole month? I will take no refusal. It's just like, and he's like, oh, okay.
It's like you thought it was bad when your boss says, like, I need you to come in tomorrow. Tomorrow's my day off. I don't care. You need to come in tomorrow. That's like the next step right there. Like a whole month.
It's like it's like I'm not even supposed to be here today, and they sent me to Transylvania to try to sell real estate.
Clerks. Inspired Clerks. Yeah.
It's just that funny thing like that. But one thing, this is the other interesting thing too. There's a couple other notes I wrote down. Is this movie right here is actually what saved Zoetrope Studios, the Francis Ford Coppola's movie section of it, because like that movie studio somehow, some way, like I think it's just a couple movies he made in the late '80s just never panned out, and then he's like, you know what? This is what's gonna fix it. Guess what? You guys ready for it? Godfather Part 3. This is what's gonna bring Zoetrope back. It's gonna be awesome. Everybody loves The Godfather, right? Well, if there was a third one, and then of course that didn't pan out so well, and then this was like most people like. There's some people go like, I will never watch The Godfather 3 again. I'm like, it's not that bad of a movie. It's still enjoyable.
It's just not Godfather 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's just not Godfather 1 or 2, but it's still good. But this movie right here actually ended up making quite a bit of money, so it like fixed all his financial woes and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of interesting there with that.
Well, that just goes to show the badassery that is Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. That Dracula could overcome. Which I'll say this will tie into like as we get farther along. In the 90s, apparently Dracula still could sell a lot of things, but as we kind of get farther into the future, I don't know. Like I just kind of questioned like Dracula being able to sell stuff to like a worldwide audience. Of course, there's people like us who are always going to love Dracula, but sometimes I start asking that question because it seems like Dracula hasn't done nearly as well in like the last almost 20 years or so. And then one more tidbit before we go a little bit farther. I know this is still going off track. I thought this was kind of a cool one too. is, you know, in the end scene when they kill Dracula and Bram Stokers, and you know, in the book
Yeah.
it's just like, I just remember, what's the Texas guy's name again? Quincy.
Quincy.
You know, he stabs him in the heart with his Bowie knife, and I think John cuts him in the throat or whatever. But then, when they were doing the movie, when Francis Ford Coppola was showing it to George Lucas was like, "No, dude, you should have me to come by and chop his fucking head off." And you know, that will show that she's finally over it. That's how you get over a date. You know, one time I had this bad relationship. Let me tell you.
I want to cut that bitch's head off.
Yeah.
George should be saying
I
that
took a
aloud.
lightning hammer out and sliced her fucking head.
I mean, they already took it to the next level where that love story didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know what, all this love story is mine. So you know what, she's gonna cut his head off. I mean, you know, we're gonna follow all the rules. You know, Harker slices his throat, Quincy stabs him in the heart, but it's gonna be Mina who cuts his head off.
But that's one of those ones where I'm like, that's cool. Even if it doesn't follow the book like that, I'm like, that's a cool add-in. I like that. And it was just cool to hear. George Lucas said that, and they literally shot that 3 weeks before the movie came out. So it's like, oh, wow, that's ballsy.
Yeah, that was good.
Quick question here. Do you guys think, I mean, I think it's a little bit of half and half myself, but in the movie, because, you know, they played off, at first when she sees him, she's like, fuck off, like, you're a trash weirdo, I don't fucking know you. And then he just keeps on hanging around. He gets a look at it in his eyes, and she kind of falls for him, and then kind of falls for his hypnotism, kind of. Do you guys think that she legitimately likes him, or do you think it's one of those, that was just all of his, like, spell he put on her, and that she thought she was in love with him? Or I think it's a little bit of half and half myself.
You mean, do you think Mina's love for Dracula was legit? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because she's even crying when she cuts his head off right there at the end.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been reading recently the sequel to Dracula called Dracula the Undead by Stoker's great nephew, Dacre Stoker. Mm-hmm. And there's some parts in there that kind of dance around ideas of a lingering love or thought about Mina with Dracula, and that Harker gets jealous. And I don't mean to say any spoilers here, but I found that interesting because that you're bringing up that question now, which is weird because in the book there wasn't really that whole love aspect in the original Bram Stoker Dracula. But here's his great nephew talking about this love relationship. So I don't know if he was basing that off of the movie love relationship or if he was actually basing it off his great uncle's book, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a weird kind of a twist of how that's playing out. So it kind of made me think, and it's funny that Ryan, that you're asking that question because I was thinking about that the other day as I was reading it. I was like, wait. In the book, I don't think she really loved him. But in the movie, she did. But which is it, you know? So I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's kind of left up to your own interpretation.
Like, I took it kind of as, at first, like, you know, he had to, like, almost sort of, like, do his whole magic spell charm thing on her. And that was more of a nudge to kind of get her to look his direction. And then from there, she kind of was half and half on it, I felt, where it's kind of like that's got to be the whole thing for, like, you know, John, just like, hey man, come on, you know, I have a stable job, I work hard, you know, it's like the whole, like, girls, like, the bad boy thing, like, I know he's the right guy for me, but come on, this guy has his own castle, look at him.
He's like 400 years old.
He's experienced.
He showed me his balls. I don't know why, but he did.
If I had just strictly watched the movie, I would say yes. She has this lingering love for him, and that it's still lingered, that she still loves him, even though she kills him at the end for the good of mankind. But if I had just read the book and never watched the movie, I would say no, there was no lingering love relationship there. So it's really, I'm kind of tainted having experienced both, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like one of those philosophical, never-ending questions, you know, unanswered questions.
Well, I know it's kind of like the love thing sort of just slowly kind of happened as movies went on. It was like each movie sort of added just a tad bit more, and it's like it kind of built up. Because the book, as I remember, the book didn't really have that too much in it. It wasn't really
No,
as
it didn't
much as
have.
it wasn't
It
like
didn't
a
have
love
any of
story.
that.
And then as time went on, it's like I know it's like in the '60s ones they started like putting that in there, and then the '70s one that had what's his name, famous old actor. That's the '78 Bram Stokers Dracula. Well, whatever. That one was even like sold as like Dracula, a love story. And then as time went on, it just kind of built up that they just kind of made it like that. And like I heard a lot of things too because I've never seen that one. I've always wanted to go out and see it. The Frank Langella one. But people say that that's actually, even though it's not really that accurate of a Dracula movie, they say as far as a movie goes, though, it's really, really well made.
Really?
And now we have Twilight, so as far as the next love step of the whole love thing, I'm not trying to like say like, look, here's a real vampire story. Not by any means. I'm doing in the whole aspect of kind of like people just take that love thing and run with it to the next level with it.
Well, I think the love story aspect is necessary these days. I mean, that's as far as if you want to have numbers and sell, sales in the box office, all that stuff. I think it's necessary for male and female to be able to relate to a story,
Mm-hmm.
And and that's even one thing I explore in my book, was that you have action, but you also have a love story as well. So it's definitely something you have to have in there these days, I think, to really let people relate to, because there's not a whole lot of life experiences that everyday people can have, So you kind of have to have that experience in other places, other forms of media, which we are exposed to every day. So, I don't know. You understand?
No, I get you. No, I know that I didn't really think of it that way. That's why they probably have so much, why there's always a love story in so many science fiction or fantasy books. Well, that's probably one of the few things that a modern day audience can relate to. So I never thought of it that way, but that's a pretty good point.
Yeah. Even though you have all this fantastic, incredible things happening that, people are like, oh, that can never happen, whatever. You can still ground your story in that one thing that will never go away, which is a love story. So
yeah,
I can totally see why they're utilized to begin with.
I guess my only thing is when they go on autopilot with the love story, like the love story's here. Why? I don't know. Just because it seemed like to fit it in. It's like this one actually feels like it adds the story, like it's actually there for a reason, like it is a driving force of the story. So this is an example of why. Okay, that makes sense.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense there. But going in from Bram Stoker's Dracula, we come up to really, I mean, there's some Dracula movies in between, but we're doing the kind of, I guess, the Van Helsing thing. I guess like one of the next big Dracula movies. This sounds so weird because it's not really that big, but there was Dracula 2000. But
dude, I remember
nowadays
that.
it's kind of a forgotten movie. But I kid you not, when Dracula 2000 came out, that was a big deal movie. It wasn't like just some here's just another Dracula movie, and so on. But we're going a little bit farther here. We're going to 2004's Van Helsing. And I kid you not, as I said, that's a movie that every time I watch, I think it's just so good. But almost like the more I watch it, I realize how amazing this movie is. And I just look at it like, I think of it as almost like a perfect movie. I will say it's probably my favorite monster movie. It is definitely my favorite vampire movie and my favorite probably story of like Dracula and so on. I love Van Helsing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Spencer. Watching it again, and I just watched it. What was it, last night? Again for the I don't know how many times, but seeing Van Helsing, Hugh Jackman. Of course, I'm a huge Hugh Jackman fan from the get-go, but seeing him in the coat, the hat, and his badassery, and just the way the movie starts. I mean, it's just great, And
it's got the little Spanish guitar playing.
Yeah, and it starts off in black and white, and then it goes to color, which I thought was cool. And starting with Dracula and Frankenstein and his monster and all that, but then and then integrating all the classic horror story characters, villains, like Jekyll and Hyde, Frankenstein's monster, and then of course elements of Bram Stoker's Dracula thrown in there, with the three concubines and Dracula himself, and it was definitely awesome. But such a drastic comparison to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh yeah,
one thing I loved about Van Helsing was you don't get that intense shock horror like you do. Like you just don't get it these days. Like, how intense and over exaggerated it was, like when Dracula, gets angry, he gets angry. You know what I mean? It's like, especially if you got the sound turned up, you got surround sound going, and he's like, and his giant teeth come out, and his eyes are just so exaggerated, and it's like really horrific to see that, and it is consistent throughout the entire movie. It wasn't just his mouth that does that. All the vampires in there were so exaggerated, their jaws extending like these grotesque monsters. It was like, wow.
There's one part where one of the brides goes like Predator, like her mouth extends even more.
Yeah. And that just, you don't get that. You don't get that kind of horror these days in movies. I don't know. It was awesome to see that and to refresh my memory about it, because it's been a while since I watched it.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Van Helsing is I feel like it's got so many cool elements in it. It's one of those movies where it's like almost like an adventure movie first and foremost that has like horror elements. I guess you wouldn't really. I have it probably in my horror category. But it is one of those movies where it's more like an adventure, action horror movie, more than anything else. That's not saying anything against it, but that's what it's going for. But that's what makes it so cool. And then, to top it off, it's almost got like a 007 sort of vibe to it, and a Sherlock Holmes, where he's almost investigating these things. He's got this secret organization in like the Vatican. He's got pretty much his guy who's like his Q, making him gadgets and all sorts of stuff, which to me this is awesome. It's all that extra, slightly over the top sci-fi fantasy stuff that I love, and just tying it into all the different stories. And it's weird how this movie, it's one of those ones, it's kind of like that movie that either people love the living daylights out of, or they don't really care for that much. It's like a 50-50. You don't know what you're going to get when you ask somebody about Van Helsing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, truth be told, you said people love it 50-50 or they hate it. I'm actually I don't love it, but I like this movie. I like it more than probably most people, but I think that a lot of people they didn't pick up because a lot of the way the vampires talk, it's just like they don't understand me. Whenever the brides are there, it's like, well, you bitches tone it down, because they're always screaming and hissing constantly. So I think there's some people didn't get. They're trying to go with the old school style of acting, out of those old horror movies. I don't think everyone picked up on that.
No, that is definitely true. Because I think a lot of people are like, why is the acting so over the top? And why are the accents so thick? It's like, because that's how it was in the 1800s, just to let you know. And, and that's the thing, though. So, yeah, and, you watch in, those old movies, it's like, that was sort of the part. It's like, people fucking chewed the scenery. That was, what they did. That was how acting was. And this movie's, the ultimate, love letter. You got Stephen Sommers, and, but right before this, what's he fucking making? He's making Mummy 1 and 2, which is another Universal Monsters movie. And a lot of times I think people kind of forgot that. I don't think people, initially thought of, the Mummy as being oh, that's the same thing as the old Universal Mummy movie? It's like, yeah, that's the remake of it. And then Van Helsing was that. And you could tell that, that Universal was like, dude, those Mummy movies did, phenomenally good. We thought they were going to do good. They went beyond that and just did amazing. Because Van Helsing's one of those movies, dude, the budget of this movie is $160 million. $160 million. That's more expensive than, Waterworld or The Postman or all these other, ginormous movies of, right beforehand. So, you know that Universal's dude, cakewalk. We are going to make so much fucking cash off this. It's going to be, coming out of our fucking ears. So, they just almost, this movie probably just had, the ultimate green lit. in my 160 million, I kind of wonder, like, if that budget, that probably included, you know, because they had the video game, and that was probably part of the advertising. And that video game has all the actors in it, which is kind of mind-blowing. And then you had a little comic book. I mean, you had action figures. I mean, they were really putting a lot into making this Van Helsing just so awesome and cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is I think because the Mummy sort of worked because, okay, yes, the Mummy's in it, but once again, it kind of confused people. People, once they didn't realize it was old school Mummy. That to them felt like it was a brand new movie. It almost had nothing to do with the Mummy. They didn't put that two and two together. Where Van Helsing was almost going for this love letter, like, remember back in like the 30s and 40s, like the Universal monster movies, the MGM monster movies, you know, that glorious time period. And I think to a lot of people, that's like, I don't know, maybe it's just they thought it's like, that's my grandpa's fucking movies. Like, I don't want to watch that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I think that was sort of the attitude that a lot of people went into Van Helsing, and they kind of saw it, maybe thinking it was going to be cool, and then they just realized.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
So did the movie not do good? I can't remember.
Well, strange enough, it got bad critical responses. Like, it doesn't really have that great of reviews. And they say that it didn't really make that much money, but then again, once again, when you have a $160 million movie, I mean, dude, movies nowadays are barely even made for that price. Like, that is a lot of money. So they made in the U.S., I think they made back $121 million, right? Like, in the theaters. But overall, between the U.S. and worldwide, they made over $300 million. And the movie, when it came out on DVD in the U.S., in the first week, it sold $65 million worth of copies. So obviously it did really good, but the thing was, is the movie was so high up there in its initial price that, I don't know, they just kind of thought like, oh, I guess it wasn't, we wanted, you know, $500 million, and we only got 300 million, and half that money was a bunch of foreign currency. It's like, yeah, but it's still money. Yeah, it's not American money, though.
Yeah, I have that game, by the way.
You know, I've always wanted to get that game, and I remember, like, I kind of thought about, like, the reason why I never got it back in the day is because I didn't have a PS2 or an Xbox at the time. I just had a GameCube, so I never got it somehow. But I remember playing the demo.
Let me tell you, it's awesome. It's a great game. I
literally, when I was watching the movie, I'm like, I gotta buy it. I found a copy on eBay for $8. I'm like, yep, that's mine.
You know, when that game came out, I was like, oh, because you know, I can't remember if it came out after Symphony of the Night, right? Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it would have been 2004.
And I remember getting that game. I was like, oh, I hope this is so like Castlevania, you know. And I played it, and it wasn't like Castlevania, but it still kind of like satisfied me in that strange way. You know what I mean?
Well, I remember on the demo it felt kind of like Devil May Cry.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. I mean, and Devil May Cry already kind of feels like almost like a spin-off of Castlevania, sort of.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, because you said it, the way it probably got made is they looked at it in the aspect of like, oh, well, Mummy is pretty big. That made us a lot of money. And Scorpion King, I don't know how that one did, but they probably just keep thinking in the context of like old franchises like that. So I'm kind of wondering if like one of the things that made them go like Vampire Hunter or Demon Hunter was something like Devil May Cry, because I'll be honest, like Devil May Cry or Castlevania definitely, because you said there's nods to it just for music, but because I'm thinking about it, like I can't think of very many, like maybe now, but up until this movie, I can't think of very many movies that have the whole like demon hunter aspect. I mean, you had Blade as a vampire hunter, and you had John Carpenter's Vampire Hunters.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have that whole steampunk kind of anime comic book kind of vibe to them, sort of like this has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Blade did, because it wasn't Blade. Blade was a comic, but I mean, like in the aspect of like the whole I don't know, because I get more of a Devil May Cry vibe from this than I like, more of a Japanese vibe with American monsters than I do with than Blade. You know, does that make any sense? You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah,
that makes sense, but I didn't think about it. But Blade was probably another reason why this movie felt like just like, how can you lose? You know what I mean? Because Blade did really, like, strangely enough, did really well. So that kind of brought like the sort of the vampire thing going. And then I can't remember, was Underworld right before this movie?
I think it was like, Underworld. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say Underworld was 2001. So yeah, and you got Kate Beckinsale in this role too. So and then Hugh Jackman's coming off of Wolverine or X-Men. So it's one of those ones, like, I felt like Universal thought that they just had it all in the bag. And I think probably the downfall was that if they didn't spend so much money just thinking that they had this, like, nobody's business, like, because let's say if they spent half the profit, like, let's say they spent $80 million, which that's still a humongous movie. Because I'll say this, Dracula, Bram Stoker's, is only a $40 million movie. Now, granted, that's, 14 years beforehand or 12 years beforehand, but by inflation and everything, but still, you know what I mean? Like, if they probably would have spent, like, a more conservative amount, I think Van Helsing would be looked upon as like, oh my God, this movie made, like, phenomenal amount of money.
Right.
But I think it was just like you had all these bills to pay back, and it's 160 million was the budget, but maybe the advertising and so on was still there.
You don't think like the audience was burnt out or anything from like all these fantastic monster fighting movies, nothing like that, or do you think maybe because Van Helsing had more of a comedy feel more than all these other movies?
You know what I think it is, actually, and this sounds so weird. This goes back to literally our last episode, and I know, but we were talking about, because in the 2000s is when everything started to go serious. It started to go grounded in reality was what people were looking for, and we were using, like, you remember old Sam Fisher and Splinter Cell?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's a perfect example. I just remember, when Splinter Cell came out, you started seeing people that were like, oh, dude, Splinter Cell's so much better than Metal Gear Solid. It's so realistic. It's like, this is like what it would really be like. And that's what people were looking for. And it's kind of due to, like, after 2001, after 9/11, everything started becoming like, let's make it grounded in reality. And throughout the 2000s, that's why we get Daniel Craig 007. That's why we get Splinter Cell over Metal Gear Solid. That's why we get all these certain kind of franchises that are really serious. That's why we get Batman Begins and even Dark Knight that, like, they tone it down a lot. And the thing about Van Helsing is it's still playing like it's a 90s movie. And I think that also, like, it plays like a 90s movie, but it's in 2004 when everybody's starting to make everything dark, serious, and kind of like,
right.
As I say, I said that before many times, ground in reality, but I feel like that defines it probably best.
Right.
Well, what's kind of interesting to me is because they start offhand and like releasing a press statement, kind of like saying, "Oh, we'll get to it," but no, not really. They're Universal is canceling their Dark Universe because their whole plan is they want to do their Avengers of their Universal monsters, but it's like, motherfuckers, you already did this back in 2004. You're acting as if this is a new thing. You did a movie that maybe didn't get the critical response to make as much money as you hoped for, but I mean, I think this movie definitely has its defenders, like us. So
is that something that's really happening?
Well, they were trying to so they multiple times, like Dracula Untold originally was meant to be the first of a new, like, shared universe with all these monsters, and they were going to do some other monster after that. But then, like, all right, start from scratch. Dracula Untold didn't work out. And I think the next one was the Frankenstein, like the Victor Frankenstein movie with the guy who played Harry Potter and the guy who played Professor X in the new X-Men movies. But then that movie,
Michael Fassbender.
No, was not that one. No, there was he in that?
Oh wait, did you say Professor X?
Yeah.
For some reason I thought he was.
No,
well, there was two Frankenstein movies that came out at the same time, and I'm kind of getting
one's based on a comic. I Frankenstein is based on a comic, and then there's one that I think they're trying to do the funny adventure, horror, comedy, action movie, and that one didn't go anywhere. And then there was Mummy. Was it Victor Frankenstein or Frankenstein's Monster or something?
No, that was I Frankenstein, wasn't it?
I Frankenstein's the Aaron Eckhart one that's based on a comic.
Yeah.
There was two of them that came out literally like in a 3-month span, and it was I Frankenstein. I want to say Victor Frankenstein. That sounds about right.
And they took another stab at it with the Mummy, and Mummy underperformed. So they're just kind of like, and they even made a Dark Universe logo at the front of the theater, in front of the title card. And now they're just like, yeah, we don't know. Just like, you guys already did this. This isn't anything new. You guys did it with Van Helsing. You got them all in one movie right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Well, the sad part, too, is they just don't stick to their guns and just keep going with it. Because I feel like Dracula Untold was a great starting off place. I mean, they even tried to do it with the Wolfman like a couple years before. I don't know if that was supposed to be just like a one-stop shop. Yeah, the Benicio
Joe Johnson movie, yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, you know, like Van Helsing, that would have been like, it's just the thing. It's like, hey, just because your movie maybe doesn't do as good as you want, I feel like that's not a reason to like stop. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, like I bet you if they would have kept making the Van Helsing movies, they would have done well, because you know what? They would have been like Resident Evil, and they would have had their audience. Because, you know, Resident Evil is one of those movies that you either like it or you don't really care for it. But the thing is, those movies still have their like audience. You know, I know sometimes the hardcore Resident Evil fans go, oh, it strays so far from the games. You know, and I used to think about, like, I used to kind of go back and forth on that topic for a while, and then I just kind of accepted. I'm like, you know what? It's its own universe. I'll just accept it for what it is, and they're fun movies. And that's how those Resident Evil movies worked out. I feel Van Helsing could have just chugged along. It would have done fine. And if they would have just started doing the thing where it's like, okay, we spent $160 million on the first one. Let's spend, you know, $80 million on the second one. They probably would have done totally fine, because as you can tell, the movie made a ton of money. It's just... It wasn't like, as I said, they probably wanted $500 million. You know what I mean? But that's a lot of money to ask for. Like, how many movies make $500 million? That's more like a lucky streak when you get to that point. You can't just like gamble and hope you get it.
Right.
I also think that this movie, I'm kind of curious to see what other monsters, like maybe there would have been another monster they find in the next one, but like maybe like see him go together, because this totally seems like they're setting up for a franchise, because all the tie-ins and the way this movie goes, and like the fact that because they advertised it as, okay, he's fighting monsters and maybe there's a werewolf, but it actually, as it goes on, like, oh no, they're fitting in all the Universal monsters. They're gonna make it look like a Universal monster movie. I'm thinking that like eventually we would have thought like the swamp, like the creature from the Black Lagoon, or or maybe even a mummy, or maybe even like the Invisible Man. Yeah, Medusa. Something like that.
Yeah, I like.
Well, they were supposed to have Creature from the Black Lagoon supposed to actually have a cameo in Van Helsing, and they just never got around to making that part.
Cool.
Huh.
But yeah, you can just sit down and just imagine like how many different places Van Helsing could go. I mean, that's like one of those stories where it's like, dude, he's like 007. He could have 20 movies, and you would always have content. You know, I was thinking about it, because I watched a little prequel beforehand, and that's the one, like, it just pretty much expands the story of him fighting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And it's only like a half an hour animated piece, but it's really cool. I kind of wish they just threw it on the DVDs just since it's so short, but they sold it sort of separately. Once again, another little tie-in that they had.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those ones, like, yeah, just picture him going through, you know, and fighting all kinds of different creatures. I mean, you could even make up creatures, too, as time goes on. He doesn't have to just fight just classic ones, but yeah, you could, and just use that to tie in. And I mean, yeah, like I felt like that's the thing, though. It's like it had such a great start. That story, to me, is so much fun and so strong. I just think it was the wrong time. I think that was sort of it. But you know, you go on Amazon, it's all 5-star reviews for this movie. There isn't anybody who's given it like, I mean, there probably is somebody, but you're not seeing it who's given it lower than maybe a 4-star, because it's you know. For the person, it's a great movie. For somebody who loves classic movies, somebody who likes action adventure and likes all these things put together, because how many times does that really happen where there's all these monsters in one? Like, I can think of a few. There was, you know, Monster Squad back in the 80s.
Yeah, Monster Squad. What a great movie.
That movie's great. You know, but before that, like, what the heck, you know, there hasn't been anything since, like, House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein, or, like, the Abbott and Costello meets, like, whoever, and so on. Like, there was a long spree between, like, having these, like, it's everybody together. And the funny thing is, too, it's like, people think of that, like, being, like, a Marvel concept, but who was doing it way before Marvel, as far as cinematic-wise? Like, Van Helsing was, like, literally getting that start. Like, literally, I can almost even say Van Helsing is almost what starts Marvel's kind of run. I mean, I know it has nothing really to do with each other, but you think about it, like, that is literally, like, an Avengers movie right there before they did the Avengers movie.
Well, it stars a Marvel guy, not a Marvel Studios guy, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like, but like the best Marvel guy.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I am kind of curious to know where it would have gone, though. That's the thing. And plus, I think that actually the humor of this movie kind of helps out. Like, even the aspects of, like, there's that one shitty like, that's I'll say one thing about it is, in every vampire movie, whenever there's the town that's always being bombarded by, like, vampires all the time, they're always so fucking shitty. It's like, I'm glad all these fuckers are dying, because there's, like, the one gravedigger guy who just looks forward to whenever somebody dies. Like, yes, we're getting attacked. That means I get to dig more graves, you know?
He's got that line where he's like, "It's a little bit tight for me, but it's perfect for you." It's just like, God, like, no wonder nobody visits Transylvania, because it's not because of the vampires, it's because of you assholes. You know what's the weird thing too is they built that town because they assumed they were going to make a TV show called Transylvania, and they were going to use that same set for it, and then they were going to try to get cameos every once in a while where Hugh Jackman shows up.
So there was meant to be a spin-off show where it just continued, like, oh, remember when Van Helsing came? Oh, there goes Buck. Oh, he's gone. Like that.
No, I think Universal literally probably thought, they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do animations. We're going to do a TV show. We're going to make movies. Like, I think they thought this was just going to be a huge franchise and it was going to really turn into something. And yeah, once again, I do think it's set up so awesome. And it's like one of those ones, like, because I will say this, how many times do you get a one-off movie that literally has this much content in one film? I mean, this is like one of those movies, like, you kind of think about it, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like, but, like, I mean, all the scenes are in. I mean, like, for $160 million, you see that $160 million. I mean, he starts off, and he's in London, and he's fighting Dr. Jekyll, and then next thing you know, he goes to the Vatican to learn about, like, you know, his secret, like, 007 training grounds thing. And then next thing you know, he's traveling up to Transylvania, and then they're out in the woods, you know, going towards Budapest, and then they're, you know, it's like they're always going somewhere. And there's that cool ballroom scene too, like later on, which I look at that and I go, you want to see where $20 million was spent?
All those suits, all those masquerade masks.
But even that scene, it's a really cool scene. And then you kind of, there's a cool part where, like, when Kate Beckinsale's, you know, kind of trapped by Dracula and she's dancing with him and everything like that, and you kind of wonder, like, are they all vampires or are they not? And then all of a sudden they bow in front of a mirror and you just see nobody else is there except for her. It's like, that's cool.
Yeah, I caught that, and I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, wait a sec, I can't remember, are all these people in here vampires? And then there she goes, dancing with Dracula, and I'm like, wow, it's just her. Like, yep, they're all vampires. And then surely a couple of minutes later, he's like, everybody, look, it's Van Helsing. And they all look up, and they're like, and they got those predator mouths opening up. It's like,
see, actually, I think that might be the part where the Symphony of the Night's music might be
really?
that scene. So we might have to. That might be where we have to check. I think that might be it because it's where it's said on IMDb. It's where he introduces Gabriel, and I think that's the part might be that scene.
Regarding Kate Beckinsale's character in the movie, because they get across that her family is a long lineage of demon hunters, and their, like, great-great-great-grandfather or whatever swore to God, like, none of me or my family will get into heaven until one of us kills Dracula. And it's one of those things like, motherfucker, you're ruining it for all of us. Like, think of how many generations be like, yeah, you know what, I want to go into fucking real estate, but my fucking cocksucker of a great-grandfather says I go to hell unless, I don't know, I start walking around with a fucking stick and a hammer and chasing some fucker with long teeth.
Yeah, exactly. Just set them up for, like, a horrible lifestyle.
Yeah, and I never learned how to play catch. Want to know why? My father died when I was fucking 2. Why? Because he was trying to go after fucking Dracula.
Oh, it's totally like that. You know what's another part that makes you kind of laugh? And this is another little monster they add in there. They're, like, barely in there, but they have zombies in there for, like, a moment or whatever. And I like with it, like, because I don't know why Van Helsing gets this great idea. It's like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave the Frankenstein's monster in this, like, graveyard, because that's, you know what? Nothing's gonna happen to him here. Nobody's gonna bother him. And of course, the second that they knock him out and put him in there, these zombies come out and take him. like they see the creature later on. It's like, the zombies, the undead, they took me. It's all your fucking fault, Van Helsing.
I like how, like, I feel like if this movie was rated R, they would just let Frankenstein go out, like, because you have that whole, like, angry cockney, like, fuck you, you fucking cunts, like, as they're dragging him by, because he's always swearing, like, you all go to hell, I fucking hate you all. Like, I feel like this movie
what did I do? What did I do? I hit him with a shovel.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. He'd be like that.
I feel like they one step away from being a Guy Ritchie movie.
I saw him fucking a goat. So what I did, I hit him with a fucking shovel.
That's my goat. That's my lady.
See, that might be the thing. That might be the only way to kind of bring back almost like Van Helsing and things like that. Is that maybe Universal just needs to go rated R with it and just go ballsy. Maybe just pull a Deadpool or something like that. I don't know, because clearly whatever they're doing right now, because I mean, I'll say this, I like all the ones they can. Like, I was one of the few people that, like, I walked out the Mummy, I'm like, it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't as good as it should have been, but like, I still enjoyed it.
So that's
I love Dracula Untold.
So the new Mummy was more like a modern day Mummy. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to see it.
It was totally. This is my best way to describe it. The Mummy movie felt like an Uncharted movie if they happened to discover a mummy.
Oh, sweet. I definitely gotta watch.
Picture Tom Cruise as Nathan Drake, and that's what that movie was.
Oh, I gotta watch it then.
Like, and I liked it, and then it had like a cool twist that, like, since you haven't even seen it, like, I won't even mention that. And I mean, as I said, it wasn't like the most amazing. It wasn't like Van Helsing amazing, or even like Mummy 1 and 2, or I'll say Mummy 1 amazing. But it was still pretty good. It was still cool, and it's like once. Sometimes here's the thing: is like your first movie doesn't always have to be pure amazing. Lots of times you can kind of make the pure amazing one on the second round. I mean, I could think of movies off. Let me just think. There's movies I can think off the top of my head where you watch the first one and it's it's good. It has a good concept, but then they finally come out with the second one. It's like that's where it's all at. And I think that's the downfall to Universal is they don't allow it to naturally progress. They just keep restarting it. So it's like I don't know what you guys are trying. I mean, I know you got this Fast and the Furious money, so you can just kind of like throw something. It's like Fast and Furious just came out. Let's try the monsters again, okay? Oh, damn it. Well, Fast and Furious 9, and then we can try the monsters again.
They just need to throw out Fast and the Furious with a monster, just like have Vin Diesel have a drag race with the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, exactly. And give it like this rockabilly soundtrack and everything. Yeah. They have it directed by like Rob Zombie.
Oh, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
That'd be good.
The creature from the Black Lagoon with like Fast and the Furious.
I'm at this point because here's the thing. We'll get back to Van Helsing in just a second. Fast and the Furious, to me, it's one of those things. I don't dislike them. I don't hate them. And I'll even go so like, oh, they're enjoyable movies. But it's never a movie I'm like, I got to go see that. Somebody has always grabbed me by the arm and taking me to go see it. Like every one I've seen in theaters since I think 4 has been someone dragging me along. Like, okay, sure, I'll check it out. Oh no, it was good. It was fun. Like, but it's never a movie myself. It's usually with Spencer or Marley. So a guy who's on the show.
I'm one of those people like I will drag you to that movie because I want to be there day one because I just love those ones. But yeah. I do kind of also wonder, though. It's like, I've thought about this over time because it's like one of those ones like these movies never seem to pan out as well as they try. And it's like, I think people are like, they're interested in monsters, but I don't know if people have this like love of like old school monsters as they once did. You know what I mean? I kind of wonder, is it like at the end of the day, is Dracula a hardcore selling item? You know what I mean? Like, because even like, I'll say this, Castlevania games aren't really as popular as they once were. I mean, obviously, that's probably more Konami's fault than anything else. But still, like even in the last like 15 years that Konami kind of released them, Castlevania from 2000 on up was never like it was more like an eclectic, like here's this audience that loves it and loves it to death, but it wasn't like everybody was playing it. You know what I mean? It was all, and I think that's always kind of how Dracula is. Like, you could take something like Twilight. See, Twilight's almost like it's new, it's modern, it's not your grandpappy's vampire movie, but. It's one of those ones where it's like, is Dracula and the rest of the guys, Frankenstein and everything else, is that just like a little just too old for the? Is it in the same category? I hate to say it, but is it in the same category as like John Carter, and is in the same category as like almost like the Phantom and the Shadow and like these characters that it's not that they're not cool, but are they a little bit too hard to sell to a modern audience, like a wide modern audience?
I think they kind of are by this point. I mean, I like them. I mean, maybe just a particular take, but I think we've seen like, I think it's kind of like Death Wish. Like Death Wish is a good revenge movie, but so many movies have aped Death Wish by this point. So it's kind of like
Aped Wish. Yeah,
exactly. Well, that'd be the next Planet of the Apes movie. I feel like that. Bring in the whole fantasy aspects, but no, I feel like because so many people have done revenge movies following the format of Death Wish and made it a little bit more like, okay, well this one he actually gets the guy, or this one it's more violent, or this one has a different kind of hook to it. Where I think so many people have done their own little twist and take on vampire shit or just these monsters in general. I think people, when they just said you try to sell it as, oh, Dracula again. I think people have trouble getting on board.
I mean, honestly, I just think, movie producers just need to get a hold of my book, and the whole vampire will be rekindled.
I'd see your movie. I'd see your movie day one. And I may have already asked this. We may have asked this before, but I don't remember. Did we ask if you could have one or two directors? Who'd it be?
Yes. Guy Ritchie.
That's right. You said Guy Ritchie. That's right.
You know, it's funny because, like, I was thinking that too. I was like, when you mentioned Guy Ritchie earlier in this episode, I was like, dude, picture a Van Helsing movie made by Guy Ritchie.
Hell yeah.
It would be him, like, getting, like, he's going to the back alley deals to get, like, says, hey, bloke, how's it going, mate? Going in and grabbing, like, oh, straight, like, this is the pure shit, the raw shit, pulling out, like, holy water.
See, I think that's almost it. I think maybe Universal just needs to go a little bit more ballsy, and I think the thing they almost need to do is don't play it safe. Almost just get some radical director and have, like, one of those kind of scripts where it's like, make it rated R. Because here's the thing, going back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, that movie's kind of ballsy because it's kind of weird. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing, is you think of that movie being like, oh, it'll be like a straightforward, vampire hunting thing, and it's like, no, it's kind of a weird movie. But that's what makes it kind of cool, is that it's weird. You know what I mean? And you don't expect to have those scenes, and you don't expect to see, like, just like wolves coming in and, like, biting women and things like that and humping them and everything like that. It's like, he's like, oh, I came for the vampires. And
then there's also, like, you get something like, okay, there's a 4-way, and then they eat a baby.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking that's almost what they kind of need in these Universal movies, is they just almost need to go like, hey, let's drop the act. Let's not try to make a family-friendly movie. Because I want to say that, okay, Dracula Untold, is that rated R or is that PG-13?
It's not rated R. Definitely not.
Okay, so that one's PG-13. Is the Wolfman PG-13
That was R.
too? Okay, so the Wolfman's the only ballsy one so
far.
Well,
the Wolfman, I think it was I think that one was a straight up remake. Like they weren't trying to put any funny twist on it. They're just like, no, this is a straight up remake.
Yeah. Yeah. It was okay, the Wolfman. I mean, it wasn't like super awesome, It was
I don't remember
good,
it that well. I remember liking it, but I don't remember it that well though.
I know, I have it sitting over there. I should pull it out and watch it.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah,
too.
It's just one of those like, I don't know. I just try to think.
I just realized something. All right. So, Wolfman, Tony Hopkins is like, I used to be a wolf, son. Think back in Van Helsing, how he brings down Dracula.
That's true. He was a wolf. Well, yeah. It could come around. I will say that was the only part, though. If there's one small thing I can kind of, like, nitpick ever so slightly in Van Helsing, I always thought, like, even, like, day one seeing it in theaters, I thought it was kind of weird. It's like, where they're like, the only thing that can kill Dracula is a werewolf. I'm like, but Dracula turns into a wolf. That's fucking weird. But that was all I was
Sometimes they depower him. Sometimes, like, because in Bram Stoker's, he was, like, he could turn to rats, mist, to wolf. This one is like, okay, I just turn into a bat monster and my mouth gets big and it's hard to kill me.
Yeah, and that's what I've kind of, over time, I've just sort of accepted it. I go, okay, that's just its mythos, is that Dracula, he just turns into they don't give him all his, like, radical powers that he pretty much had from Bram Stoker. But that was the first thing I thought.
One thing I noticed when they were like, I forget this, that they had this conflict in the movie, in the story of Van Helsing, that they couldn't figure out how to kill Dracula. I'm thinking to myself, well, he never really was out in the daylight, right? So he could probably die by sunlight, right? They never
That's a good point.
They never.
He survived that grenade though.
Well,
that's a good point.
But was he in the room at the time, right?
I think killed everybody in the building because you saw the.
Yeah, that grenade like went through doors and everything.
But
remember, because they had the outside shot and the whole building.
But then remember when he's in the city, in the town with the snow, and he's got the repeating crossbow and he's shooting at the concubines flying through the air.
Well, that's because it was a cloudy day, because they have the part where the clouds clear away.
No, right, but he shoots the one up with all his silver bolts, right? Mm-hmm. And she doesn't die. But then he's like, I got a great idea. Let me dunk the crossbow in the holy water.
Oh, right,
and then
yeah.
shoot her point blank, you know. and that's what kills her, right? And I'm thinking to myself,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't he try that? Why didn't he try that against Dracula? You know?
That's a good point.
Yeah, obviously worked on these guys. Well, that's always that thing that's like, I thought about this in movies, and this also goes back to, this sounds so weird, but when I think of Warner Brothers cartoons and how as a kid they used to stress me out for the fact that I'd look at like Wile E. Coyote, I'm like, why don't you just do your same gimmick again but make it better? Don't do it once, and it just because it didn't work once means you have to try something brand new. Like, that used to bother me so much as a kid. Like, it'd be like, why? Just do it again. I know you can get, if you just keep trying the same tactic, I know you can kill that person. I know you can get him. But you keep changing your goddamn mind, and every single time you change your mind, that's why you fail. And I know it's the same thing happens in movies too. It's like they'll try something once, but they never come back and say, "Hey, let's try that again, just better."
Well, it's like take the time it took you to stop, look down, and hold up the help sign. You could have ran right back to the cliff.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, okay,
no,
so
or what you
so
gonna say?
there was, there were some inconsistencies through the movie as far as the whole slaying aspect of the movie. So in the town scene, when he finally kills the woman, he dunks it in the holy water. And then they're doing the chase scene with the carriage, and the carriage falls, and she goes for the bait and tries to get the monster out of the carriage as it's falling. And there's that catch of silver stakes in there, and when it explodes, they all pierce through her and stuff. Well, how come those stakes kills her without the holy water? You know what I'm saying?
Now, was the other ones just regular arrows, though? That's what I start to wonder. Is like, because did they ever mention if those were like silver arrows, or were they just regular, crossbow arrows that then he had dunked in?
I thought they were like silver crossbow bolts.
I mean, I totally get what you're saying, but at the same time, maybe it is one of those things. Those ones weren't blessed, and since then they blessed them, or something like that. I mean, the movie could have been more clear about it, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for the way it worked, I'm gonna say I think those must be just regular bolts, and then he had it, and then the stakes were in there for the other one to explode. So I don't know. That's just I'm trying to put logic into there now that I think about it.
Because that is a pretty good point you brought up, Frank. Yeah, because he does just after, because like Kate Beckinsale, the third one, she just stabs her at point blank range. Like, don't spend your time to talk about kill him, just kill him, or whatever that line is, and then she just dies right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just gets stabbed, and that's it. So Also, this sounds like such a weird, like, small, like, little, like, nitpick thing, but this is something I always thought was kind of like, and I know some people can be like, you accept everything else in the movie, but this one thing. But when Van Helsing and Kate Beckinsale go to escape Dracula's castle at, I guess, the halfway point in the movie or something like that, and he shoots his grappling gun, like, across the way, but I feel like that is like way too far of a distance. I'm sorry, like I'm all down for the grappling gun thing. Batman fan, I can believe, but when I see that thing just shoot, like, I mean, like, that's like a huge ravine, like, and it just, I mean, where is that cable hanging out at? You know what I mean? It's like, it's the 1800s. It's not like he's got like micro cable, that we can use to go to the moon.
Everything's possible through Christ, who's his boss.
That's kind of true.
It was
I like how it's kind of like a network. It's like sort of like a Christian network, but they almost like sort of all operate sort of differently down there too. It's like, well, we are. It's kind of like we have that. That's like our front is Christianity, but down below we can do whatever we want. I'm a friar.
Is a magical holy rope that was intertwined within the folds of his jacket. That's where all that twine came from.
There you go. I like that. Yeah.
And it perfectly uncoiled across the ravine too, in symmetrical loops.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what it is. I always thought that part was just like, there's always those like some moments in movies like like I'll suspend my disbelief for multiple things. Like, I mean, things don't have to be like super realistic. Of course, I don't even want them like that. But there's always those one moments like that. It's just like, okay, you got to have at least a little bit of pseudoscience to back that one up. Come on.
Or
that's a long
how many
shot
crossbow bolts he shot out of the crossbow. It's like that part.
Before he had to reload.
The part where Kate is running, and he's trying to shoot the vampire women while they're flying, while she's running, and none of those bolts hit any of them, including Kate.
Went to stormtrooper shooting school.
I like. Well, I know. Yeah, there's a part where he's like literally shooting. It's like, okay, you got a machine gun crossbow launcher, and you're shooting it like it's. You know, what I mean, this is not a safe weapon to be like firing around others. It's not like a hostage negotiating gun. Also, too, I think about like, okay, all those bolts are just literally flying out into the sky, landing God knows where. How many like children and stuff are like fucking just like impaled on the ground from Van Helsing's like
just legions of cattle dead.
I know, but that one cow that went through
that's
the
what's
thing
important.
survived.
As long as the one cow made it, we assume every other cow made it.
That was so random too. It's like the women are attacking villagers, like snatching up people, and it's like, oh, I'm so angry. I'm gonna snatch this cow and throw him through the roof.
My question is, if they're that strong, if they could lift up a cow like it's no fucking problem, why do they? You think they just like, I don't know, just rip someone's arm off or something? I mean, I know it's PG-13, but you know what I mean. They don't seem as physically strong the rest of the movie once they lift up that fucking cow.
It was just like, I just laughed
exactly.
when I saw that, because it's just one of those random things that you have to laugh at when you see it, because it's like everybody's running, taking cover for their life. But screw the cow.
I can see
for the cow.
I can see some producer. This is just me spitballing. I have no idea. I can see some producer being kind of like, you know, what was one of the biggest selling points for Twister? A cow in middle of a whirlwind. What if we have a scene where we have a vampire pick up a fucking cow? And for like the last like 15 years, he's been trying to get that scene in there. Just like, dude, all right, just give him the fucking cow so he shuts the fuck up. We're gonna put in the trailer, right? Sure, Frank, we'll put in the trailer. Sorry, not you, Frank. That's just my go-to name. Sure, sure, Ron, we'll put it in the trailer.
Notch on the board.
Yeah, exactly. Just one of those ones there. You know what's another interesting thing too is like I was kind of like doing a little bit of research on Van Helsing, and because you know that like in this one they don't call him Abraham Van Helsing, they call him Gabriel Van Helsing instead. So that always makes you kind of wonder, like, is he supposed to be the same one? Did at some point he get a name change? Is it like his brother? Is it his cousin? Is it, you know, like why is his name different? And then like one of the things there, like somebody tried to say, they're like, oh yeah, you know why he's called Gabriel and why Dracula always kind of refers to him, like, remember all those nightmares you have? And back in the day, it's like they try to make him out like he's the archangel Gabriel that fought Dracula in the 1400s or something weird like that. I was like, well, that's kind of odd because I never thought of it like that, but I just always thought it's like, oh, maybe, you know, Gabriel's like his, you know, middle name, and that's what he goes by when he's young and hip, and then all of a sudden when he gets older, he's like, no, I gotta call myself Abraham.
I assumed it was the archangel thing, because that's a theory I heard before too. But you know, it's one of those things they're playing like, don't worry, we'll save that for the sequel.
Yeah, well, no, he did totally mention the left hand of God, which was Gabriel. So, and
Mm-hmm. And he mentions like the ring being taken. Oh, I feel like that was something. That is clearly something, because it was never like, it was one of those ones like I didn't really even like. I remember just watching the movie the first handful of times. And I'm like, he mentioned this, and I was like in my mind, because I was thinking Symphony of the Night. I'm like, oh, maybe it's fucking Dracula's son is who he is, and that's what it like that in my mind. I started thinking of that idea for a long time, and then like when I saw that kind of later on, it was like, oh, okay. I guess that could be kind of it, but I felt like that was something that was supposed to be like if they're in Van Helsing 2, they were gonna like go way more into depth into that. Because that was really just so lightly touched on in this movie.
Yeah, they should have totally made a second one, because as him and his fire guy ride off into the sunset, you know, on horseback, you know, and the journey music goes back on, you know.
Yeah, that cool little guitar part.
I was like, okay, well, that's a setup for a second one, but never happened.
When you said journey music started for a split second, I'd be like, just a small town girl starts to play his thing right away.
Yeah, I knew you were going to probably say something like that.
Yeah, that's my go-to. You can see. Am I that obvious? Oh.
But yeah, and it's even like, I'll say, I like how Van Helsing even has the ballsy ending, where like even though this movie is kind of like a fun and like almost like maybe you could say kind of like a slightly over the top, even campy or something like that. But they choose the ballsy ending where it's like, oh, the woman dies, and it's like, no, she doesn't get resurrected or anything like that. It's like the shit just happens. And, you know, I guess it works out because now the rest of the family's like, finally, we've been stuck here in purgatory waiting because of stupid Grandpa Bob, who had the great idea to, you know, curse a vampire back in the day.
I just like the idea. There's like at the dinner table, like they make Bob sit at the other table at the way in, like at the kids' table, kind of. Like, no, Bob, it's your fucking fault we're here in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those ones. It's like, so they have that kind of like Star Wars moment where he looks up in the clouds, and it's like she's up there with fucking Yoda and Darth Vader.
And Mufasa.
Yeah. All the great people of time.
Yeah,
But,
it definitely had closure at the end though, so that's good. You know.
But I like how, like, you know, like the super happy ending would have been like all three of them make it, whatever, you know, or like maybe she gets attacked. It's like, it's okay, we have a healing magic that Dracula had. It's like, why does Dracula have this? I don't know. He's got a lot of things, you know. I mean, like, why are you questioning everything he has?
There was a second vial of serum. We're healed.
The other thing too, it's interesting, that vial of serum, it's in that acid thing, but for some reason it doesn't destroy the needle. I don't know. I just kind of think about it.
You're spoiling the movies, man. We're killing it.
That's okay. I'm assuming the people that are listening to this have probably most likely watched Dracula and Van Helsing, or if they haven't, they just don't care enough.
No, but the whole fantasy aspect of it, you know, it's like it's just like you said, it's just one of those things you kind of ignore, you know. It's like, oh yeah. You know, what did the friar say is like, yes, we don't touch that, or I don't put my hand in whatever he called that stuff. Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you think when you realize the simple is just like, oh, you just got to push it over, grab like a towel, and like, okay, got it, move, go. You know?
Yeah. It's just, it's like weird material, but then she's able to like scoop it up and throw it on like the prison bars, and it just like eats away at that.
Yeah. Here's an oversight. What did you think of the character Igor?
Oh yeah.
I actually kind of like him in this movie too. Where he's just like this guy who's just like, whatever, like whoever's my new master, I'll work for him. I'm just this horrible person at heart.
I like it. He's like, why do you keep torturing that poor soul? He's like, what else am I supposed to do? It's what I do.
Yeah, it's just like that's like what he does. It's like, that's my entertainment.
Well, he also sums it up, his personality, just with one line. And granted, it's later in the movie, but like, Igor, do others onto how you, like, what was it, like, do others how you do to them, or like, before they do it to me. Like, he just like he assumes they're gonna whoop and beat him, so he just beats him to the punch.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that they do a great job of him, and I even will say, like, I even like kind of Dracula's like weird little like Ewok fucking skeleton minion things that kind of like work in his lair and, you know, go down and shoots. Because you have to think about it, they're like demented Ewoks, really.
Yes.
If Ewoks had more of a movie, they would fight those things. You know what I mean? That would be the creatures that land on like Endor, and the next thing you know, the Ewoks had to fight them.
I assume they were Jawas, not the Hoods.
Or yeah, maybe that's almost like what they are too.
Yeah, or like the Sand People, like shorter versions of the Sand People, or
they did have the thing going on in the movie.
Yeah. I also like when Van Helsing like smashes one of their faces in, and it's like all like bitey and stuff. It's like, like coming after him.
Yeah, they had to show that at some point because, you know, you're dying to know what was under those masks. You know,
exactly,
it's now I know I know you didn't play the game, but in the game that's the most thing you fight in the game are those creature things. That's like the most common enemy.
Like the Goombas?
Which is kind of weird because in the movie, he hardly fights those things.
Yeah.
So like, why are we fighting these things so much?
Now, I want to ask you this. In the game, do they throw any other characters in there that are kind of like, oh, that's cool? They threw, like, you know, like, I'm assuming not this, but like something like Creature from the Black Lagoon's in here or something like that.
No. Not that I can recall. No, granted, it's been like, honestly, like, when did that game come out? around
2004.
Around the movie, right? So
Yeah.
dude, you're talking like
Yeah.
13 years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
God,
So-
this
Well,
movie's that old. Jesus.
I haven't.
yeah, it's weird to think.
I haven't really played it since then, so it's still there though.
I finally picked it up or whatever, so hopefully it'll be here in the next couple of days. And it's like, I'll have to sit down and at least try it out more. I played the demo, and that's about it. But it's just one of those ones like, yeah, I can't wait to play that. I mean, I have the Van Helsing action figure too that came out around when this movie came out.
And it came with some like weird green glow in the dark slime or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, they all came with weird goo for some odd reason.
Like it's creepy horse shit. The kids will like it.
Yeah, it's like the creepy crawly things,
Funny, a good thing about good to know. Maybe it's because it's around Halloween time, but I'm on the IMDb page just to look up weird facts about it here and there, and it's up 85% in popularity. So that's good to know that this thing still has its fan basis and people are still curious about this movie.
Really?
Well, I also noticed that they released a 4K Blu-ray of it, which, there's not tons of 4K Blu-ray movies out there. So obviously that means they realize it's still a popular. I think this is one of those movies. I think the farther this movie goes in time, I think it might kind of have a sort of a comeback, and it might be remembered a little bit better. I know that obviously it didn't get the critical response it needed. There's like the 50-50 between people that liked and hated it. I remember even when the movie came out, there's people that are like, oh my God, the CG in the movie was so terrible. And all I was thinking was like, what the? It's 2004. What are you comparing it to?
Yeah, no, I thought.
You know what I mean?
I thought it was.
We've had CG for 14 years practically.
I thought it was good now. Still watching it again,
Yeah, I think it holds up really well, actually.
And like when the brothers ripping his skin off and shit, and it's like, wow, that looks cool.
That was an interesting transformation. Rather than just seeing hair come out of him, it's just like the body bursts out, like the skin comes off and the hair comes from underneath like the skin, and then when he's done being the werewolf skin comes off, he's back to being human. I just thought that was a cool transformation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was different and everything like that too. And but yeah, it's just it's just weird how and I know that's we've kind of went over that before. It's just like how people it just makes me weird. It's like, how do you not like this movie? It's one of those kind of movies that's just like I don't get it. Like if somebody really hated this movie, but they liked, other horror things similar. Like they liked, classic monsters. And if you liked things like Underworld or Blade or things at the time, it's like, I just don't get it. Like, how can you not like this? It's like one of those ones. They must just hate fun.
I think maybe because maybe because it's just the over dramaticness of it, like when the brother comes to warn his sister in their house and he's trying to fight off the transformation of his werewolfness, and there's a good minute or two of him just suffering and his body morphing and bending and turning into a wolf. You know what I mean? It was really over the top dramatic scene like that.
I like how he crawls up. He does kind of an exorcist thing where he crawls up the wall backwards in the corner.
Yeah, he's stuck to the wall like glue. He's transforming on the wall. It's like, whoa, okay.
I think that it's kind of a combination of things. Like Spencer said earlier, I think as 2000s people wanted things more serious, and then on top of that, I think you had people. I think a lot of people did not get okay, well they're supposed to be overacting because that's how that acting was back in the 1930s and 1940s. It wasn't as reserved. So I think when people see him being blah Dracula, I think a lot of people were a little bit more thrown off. Like, why is he acting like that? It's like, well, it's an homage, and I don't think a lot of people got caught onto that.
Yeah, I think that kind of I think it was a couple of multiple small things that sort of got people. But here's the thing. I'll say this: Van Helsing even sort of has sort of a legacy of other movies that kind of came after it. You think about that Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Oh
movie.
yeah.
I mean, talk about that. That is literally hey, let's do that Van Helsing thing, but with Hansel and Gretel instead. Or even the Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Those movies kind of feel obviously that made an impact throughout time to other films that wanted to do something similar.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about the Hansel and Gretel one.
Yeah, I forgot.
That movie, I remember, I thought that movie was going to be almost as cool as Van Helsing, and it was more it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't nearly as amazing as I thought it was going to be.
Apparently, Oh, go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
No, I forgot about the Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter thing.
That one was actually pretty good. I was more surprised with that one than
I
I
didn't read the book, but I listened to the audiobook and watched the movie, and it's good. I liked it. It was definitely different.
It was fun.
Yeah. Definitely like the Abraham
Plus,
character.
I like in my research, I came across a movie that was called Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, and I was almost like, man, and it's a Canadian movie too.
I must know. By itself, I'd be like, okay, maybe. Canadian, though. Oh, I need to see this.
that kind of topped it off. So. But no, overall, I think it's one of those ones, like, if you've never really seen Van Helsing, I think it's definitely worth going out and watching it. Because I think as long as you go into it going, okay, expect a old-timey movie with a modern-day, like, action feel, I think you can kind of jump into it with that. I think maybe sometimes somebody's expectations, I mean, we all get to that point, like, you see a trailer, and you think, oh, this is what the movie's going to be all about, and then you go to watch it, and you're like, well, that was way different than I thought, or I kind of expected to go this direction or that, and maybe that kind of turns you off. But sometimes if you go back to that movie later on and go, okay, this is what that movie is, then you can almost like really like it. I mean, I always use this example for myself. When I first saw Fight Club, and then it turned out to the point where it's like Brad Pitt wasn't real, I'm like, this movie's fucking stupid. Brad Pitt's not real? That is the dumbest fucking twist I've ever seen in a movie. And then I went back and watched it again, knowing that Brad Pitt wasn't real, and it was like, it makes sense to me. If we all had a second personality, we would so be Brad Pitt. and then I just love the movie from that point on. But like I think that's the thing is some people go in and they never give the second chance. Because I bet you a lot of people that might not even like Van Helsing, maybe if they went back in with an open mind, maybe they would come back around and go, you know what, it actually was a pretty fun movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I was expecting Van Helsing 9/11, but I didn't know it was gonna be fun, happy and everything like that. I thought he was gonna fight like Osama bin Laden or something like that.
Well, I know there is like a serious post-apocalyptic Van Helsing show on Netflix. I watched the first episode or two of it, and
isn't that the one?
it looks like a sci-fi channel show.
That is not. I couldn't watch it.
It wasn't that good. I watched like the first 2 episodes.
I watched the first.
Now, is that based off the comic book or? Because there's a woman Van Helsing comic book. I don't know if they're one the same.
Probably, but I watched like the first 20 minutes of it. I was like, I had to stop it. I couldn't watch it anymore. I was like,
that's like something that like it should be good, but I looked at it and I was like, I don't know. I don't want to watch it and then have it be not good. And
yeah, I was kind of hoping. I'm like, oh please, let this be good. Let's have some more vampire stuff going on here, And I was like, no, no, it's not happening.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you. I sat through 2 episodes of it. I was like, nah, not for me. Well,
yeah, it's just there's just some things they're trying to like get it, but I don't know. Hopefully, at some point we can get back around and getting something or another. It's like I look at. Okay, we take like the Castlevania anime that just kind of came out somewhat recently. That thing, because that had pretty much good critical response. That's a vampire hunter thing. I don't know, that might be a good start to kind of expanding this, but it looks like nobody has jumped on board at all, including Konami themselves. Because, I think about them like, dude, like nothing else came out that, was kind of like aping that. And then also Konami, it's like, dude, that would have been the perfect time. You don't have to make a brand new Castlevania game, but you think that Konami would have done the thing where it's like, oh, guess what's coming out the PS4, the Castlevania collection, or something like that. And they did absolutely nothing. I thought it was like, what a ruined opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did Konami just assume that was gonna like flop or something, and they just didn't even care? They're like, we got casinos.
They're becoming the Japanese EA, so I don't think they really cared so much.
Well, here's the thing. At least EA makes games.
Yeah, but I mean, they just the same shitty business practices. Same like, we don't give a fuck, fuck our fan bases and fuck our creators. And they're only just pulling back, and they just blatantly said, yeah, fuck you, casinos all the way and pachinko machines.
I mean, I know it's sadly enough that's almost what Capcom does too. It's like Capcom has like their couple games, but at least I'll say Capcom. Even if whether or not people like this, at least they always will like re-release their stuff. I mean, I thought about it, I'm like, dude, you can get like almost half the Resident Evil games on PS4. That's kind of like mind-blowing when you think about it. Hell, you can get almost all the Mega Man games on PS4. But it's like, Konami, it's like, dude, they haven't released anything like that. It's like, dude, like, I just thought that Castlevania time would be a perfect point to be like, hey, let's throw some classics out. You know what I mean? Like, what you can either do them in a collection, maybe like the Mega Man collection, or you can do the thing where you, like Neo Geo, and you just release every single game individually.
Like, well, they might even do, like, wouldn't surprise me if they do, like, if Castlevania 2 comes out, that they do, like, some kind of anthology collection, or they just, like, you know what, let's try a new one. Maybe. Because I could even see them trying to, when Season 2 comes out, and if that does good, which probably will, I guess even see them trying to push for, like, another Castlevania movie, you know? And they're thinking, the producers are probably thinking in the terms of, not the guy who made the show, because that guy knew what he was doing, but I see producers like, we'll make it based on that cartoon. You mean the game, which the cartoon is based off? Yeah, sure, whatever, same thing.
Yeah, I could see that. And you know what I mean? But like, hopefully, yeah, like once the second one kind of comes out, Castlevania can do something cool, like release that. But I even started thinking about, like, it seems like even like that Monster Hunter genre, I mean, as far as video games go, it's kind of dead too. I mean, we haven't had a Devil May Cry game in a long time. We haven't had any kind of like other like slight spin-offs where like they are in that kind of Castlevania style.
Yeah. What about
I don't know.
The
It's
Witch,
like,
The Witcher? Yeah.
The Witcher?
I didn't
know.
play that, so I don't know what that one's about, but it looked like some kind of hunter movie or hunter game, you know?
But it, like, I know I've heard nothing but good things, and we had Cameron on the show when that came out, and he was all super excited about it and everything. But maybe that isn't, I mean, there's probably monsters and things like that you can fight, but I guess, like, what I'm always thinking of is something that's, like, you know, with those dark castles and, like, that anime vibe and, you know, the Castlevania feel. Devil May Cry, pretty much. I always felt, if you like Castlevania, there's no way you can't really like Devil May Cry. It's almost like right there. Unless you're one of those like hardcore Castlevania people that's like, I only play Castlevania. I don't take no substitutes.
That's me. That's me, hardcore.
Yeah, like, yeah. I don't settle for seconds.
Although I did play some of the Devil May Cries. They were pretty good, but yeah, I was pretty much hardcore Castlevania for a long time there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's like, there was another game. I can't think of what it is, but like, I've always wanted to kind of go back and play it, but you remember it was on Xbox Original, and you played as a vampire who was a vampire hunter, and it was in the Old West, and it was like a first-person shooter.
I think it was Night Watch. I think it was called Night Watch. And there was a Russian movie series called Night Watch, but I think the game was the same thing. The same name, but different thing altogether.
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
I remember like RJ's brother Cody had it, and I was like, "That's a cool concept." But you know, it's like it probably was. It would have been the same time as Van Helsing. Would have been like 2004, around that period. So maybe
Right.
maybe
The same time as Blood Rain.
Yeah, Blood Rain. There's another one. See, that's another like Castlevania style. I did see that. This sounds weird, but the Xbox Originals, or on Xbox One, they finally released it so you can put like Xbox One games on, or Xbox Original games on there. And it's funny, like they had like 12 games on there. They had like Crimson Sky, which is like, yeah, fucking A, that's one of the best Xbox games. But they put Blood Rain, but they put Blood Rain 2. It's like, you're gonna do the second one before the first one? I mean, who knows? Maybe the second one's the pinnacle game of the series, but you know, still, I just thought.
I just saw that I think there's a Van Helsing for Xbox now.
Yeah, it's the same one as the PS2 one.
Oh, is it?
But you know what? There's one that I saw that I didn't know existed. There's a Game Boy Advance Van Helsing game too, so that one's definitely different. Or somewhat.
Really?
Different. It's like a top-down view game.
Yeah. That's this one I saw for Xbox, and it's kind of like Diablo-ish.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Like, it's called Van Helsing. It has like another name underneath it, like Van Helsing something Hunter. I got it for free on Xbox. It was one of the free games, and they have it on PS4 as well. And it was actually kind of cool. It was like a top-down Diablo style. You could play it co-op, but you played as like you played like as Van Helsing's like son or nephew or something, and you were like learning the ropes from like Abraham Van Helsing.
Mm.
And there's a second one that came out too, and I haven't played that one yet, but yeah, that one was pretty cool.
Nice.
So it's like people are trying to bring back that style, but maybe not like, it's just not big, I guess. It's kind of like, you know, little games, indie games, sort of like smaller. I say B movies. I don't mean that like in a negative way, but, you know, a little bit smaller movies and so on.
Yeah. For
I don't
real.
know. I hope that Universal.
I'm trying to bring it back.
I know you're doing the work there. You know, you got to bring it by, bring it back. I know that it can be. It's one of those ones. I know that it can be. It's just gonna take that right moment, and maybe, you know what? Maybe Wolfgang is the way to go. Maybe that's the one that Wolfgang is gonna come out. It's gonna do super good, and then next thing you know, we'll start having brand new Castlevania games, brand new Devil May Cry, and Universal will finally get it back and get it all organized.
There we go.
And
Frank's fighting the good fight.
I'm trying to restore the goodness to the world by bringing back the hunters, and the vampires.
And
that's right. And the darkness.
I mean, Ash is still out there fighting monsters. I mean,
I
think
know.
that one sort of gets away with, maybe because it's modern day. Maybe that's what makes it not seem so.
It's a little more comedy.
Yeah,
it's still It's still campy though. I mean, you know.
So, I don't know, but that's probably a good place to wrap it up with. That was a good old big long episode on all things Van Helsing. I call it the Van Helsing double feature. And 2 movies you really can't go wrong with at all, and they both have video games too. It's like one of those ones like it's a win-win. And they both actually have comic books too. Both of them do.
Yeah.
Bram Stokers Dracula had a comic book?
Apparently, I when I was reading up on it today, there's a comic book. I think it might be just like a movie adaptation. You know how they used to do that back in the day.
Yeah.
And then they got a video game and they got the works.
I'm curious to know what the Bram Stoker one is. Yeah.
Well, because I just want to see is it marketed to like kids? Like, hey kids, get your favorite bubble gum, and then they open it up and there's just this werewolf just like humping a lady, like looking at the child, like breaking the fourth wall.
Oh, I'm just imagining like '90s X-Men Image comics, like big muscle-bound Keanu Reeves with a belt with a bunch of like pouches and all that shit, like just very 90s-ified. He has like a tied-in ponytail, like this is tied into the game movie. Oh.
They do have the Fury of Dracula board game, which I got. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's totally based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, literally, the game is based around that story.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it takes place after the story of Dracula. So it's like Quincy Morris is dead, and you play as Mina, Van Helsing, Seward, and Goldemang.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's like a crack version of Clue. And
awesome.
And deduction, and you're basically 4 players. Each player plays as a hunter, and then one person gets to play as Dracula, and you're moving Dracula around Europe, trying to build up your influence points. And the hunters are trying to stop you from getting your influence. And in order for the hunters to win, they have to kill Dracula. And in order for Dracula to win, his influence has to reach 13 or higher. And it's in a timed span of 3 weeks. So there's like a sun and moon icon that goes around the calendar, or around the days of the week, Monday through Sunday. And there's a daytime phase and a nighttime phase. The dynamics of the game are actually really awesome, and it's like one of my favorite board games.
That sounds awesome.
Sounds pretty.
Look out for that one. That sounds pretty cool. Speaking of that, I actually saw there was a Van Helsing board game that came out too, as another marketable tie-in. I have no idea what kind of board game it is, but I saw that on the list.
Yeah.
What if it's just like a mousetrap, but just like all like horror themed?
That'd be actually pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, Mousetrap was a pretty sweet game. I think it's just as a kid,
Mousetrap.
it had just all the pieces.
It took 24 hours to set up.
Mousetrap was cool for sure. That's like one of those games you're just like, and they just don't make games like that anymore.
No, all those pieces and that ginormous box, and then if you lose like one piece, it ruins the whole like mousetrap.
Yeah. So the moral of the story for this episode is, if you haven't watched Van Helsing, go watch Van Helsing.
Exactly. I think that's it. Support Van Helsing. Support Universal. Boy, do they need your money more than ever. You know what? We're taking callers right now, so we need you to help support Universal. You know, they provide us great entertainment for the last 100 years, and we want to keep going on. So we need to take your dollars now. We're going to take calls, okay? Have you come on in, buy a copy of Van Helsing, buy a Bram Stokers. That's not Universal. Well, okay, you're going to be supporting Sony now, okay? Sony's at Columbia Pictures is who you're going to be supporting when you buy a copy of Bram Stokers. Because you know what? We want to see that extra half an hour. We want to see what that violence was that was cut out.
To callers who donate over $1,000, you get a bag with the PBS logo on it and a copy of Wolfgang.
Yeah, exactly. That will be the gift. We're giving those out. That's a great gift. You got to have it. You know, it's going to look good in any book collection you got. But no, seriously. We'll put a link up on Amazon so that if you've never seen Bram Stoker's Dracula and or Van Helsing, you can support the podcast in a nice, easy way by clicking through and buying anything on Amazon through the link. Check out an awesome movie and help out a podcast without spending any extra cash of your own.
And how about also a link to Wolfgang?
Oh, yeah. I'll throw another link up to Wolfgang's book. Wait, Wolfgang's book. Up to Frank's book, that's Wolfgang, which is an awesome vampire hunter, and you can get that on Amazon. You know, read it on your Kindle. You can get physical copies if you want to. You have choices in life. But Frank, where else do you want to send these fine folks?
You know what? Honestly, I mean, Amazon, Barnes & Noble online. That's pretty much the two hot spots to go to as far as finding Wolfgang. But again, also you can go on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel, FD Gross, which is where you'll find the Wolfgang audiobook, which is now complete.
Woohoo.
And you can subscribe to that channel. You can subscribe to Old Man Orange channel too, because these guys are awesome. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, if you're listening to this and you want to listen to a good bedtime story that'll soothe your soul, listen to Wolfgang on YouTube. Listen to a chapter each night. Listen to a chapter while you're driving. You know, it can't hurt, right?
Yeah.
Very soothing book.
Yeah, learn about, you know, some real strife in Wolfgang's life. Some vampire slaying, some monster slaying. Definitely got some monster slaying in there. So if you got that hankering for some nice violence and action and adventure, it's the way to go, Wolfgang.
Exactly, because that's the thing. You want to see this stuff happen, you want to see all these good things, you got to support it. Because we want to see more Castlevania, more Wolfgang, more Universal Monster stuff. Why not?
That's right.
More Devil May Cry, for Christ's sakes. I mean, come on. When was the last time we saw Devil May Cry? It was like almost 10 years ago by now. I'm not counting the HD remasters and so on, but you know what I mean? Just saying. So, support the cause. Donate to your local PBS. No, wait, that's not going to help out this stuff. Donate to wherever you can on Amazon, because we all know those companies need our money.
There's the one guy in the back. He's like, more John Carpenter's vampires. Yeah, sure, why not?
Actually, I will take that. I love John Carpenter's vampires. I am down for that.
I'll take
Take
any format of vampire. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, not every.
Yeah.
I
want there to be
won't
killing in there.
Not the sparkly.
Yeah.
Not the sparkly kind.
Hell.
Not the sparkly kind.
I would love to see more Anne Rice ones. So there's choices.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But till then.
Yeah.
We're going to leave off here, or else next thing you know, we'll have, 3 hours of vampire hunting. But till then, check out oldmanorange.com for more podcasts, cartoons, music, and more. And check out Pizza Boys, the comic. That's Pizza Boys with a Z. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And I'm FT Gross.
And we'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Old Man Orange podcast. Check out our website at oldmanorange.com for even more podcasts, cartoons, videos, music, and more. Send us an email at oldmanorangepodcast@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review us on iTunes, Podomatic, or any of the other fine sites we might be located on. And if you want to help out even more, click on the Amazon or GameStop links on our webpage before you make any purchases there. Won't cost you a penny, but it sends us a little something our way. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week to Old Man Orange.